There we go.
Well, welcome to the December 17th, 2024 session of TAPR-HamSCI technical session. My name is Dave, KB0S, and this week I've been working. I have got my DX engineering antenna working, the active one. So, and I'm getting results
Okay,
very,
input level, 1, 2, 3.
yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
Uh, so, my active antenna is working fine, and I have it mostly working on a Kiwi right now. My next task is to take another RX-888 and build a second uh, K9Q radio, Whisper Demon setup. So that's it for me. Next on the list is Nathaniel, W2NAF. Go ahead, Nathaniel.
Thanks, Dave. As I was saying before we got started here, we had a very good meeting at the Fall American Geophysical Union meeting down in Washington, D.C. I brought 8 students with me. We had Mary Lou West gave a poster on Tonga. Bill Engelke was there. I gave multiple talks. Gareth Perry was there. His postdoc, Kuldeep was there. My postdoc, Kukai was there. We had a David Kasdan and the case group, they sent a student, Marcis, the one who went down to the Falkland Islands for the eclipse in October. He was there and gave a poster. We had a ham meetup on um, third Wednesday night, I think, at one of the local restaurants, and we had probably about 20 people attend. It was a very, very strong showing. So, very good. I got all of my grades in. They're all posted, so that's one thing I don't have to worry about tomorrow. So I think now what I have to do is I have to try to get caught up on posting all these recordings up to YouTube from this.
Okay.
But at least it was a very good week. So back to that.
Okay. Next on the list is Bell Engelke, AB4EJ. Go ahead.
oh, thanks, Dave. Yeah, I'm sorry, I put it in a minute ago. I wasn't sure my microphone was working. I was getting some error messages, but anyway, yeah, AGU last week, most of the time spent there. When I did come home, my new Flex Radio 8600 had arrived, so I got
Yay.
Yay,
ran
finally.
that up over the weekend, and it's running now, and it seems to do everything fine. So that's all I have. Back to net.
Okay. Uh,
I got the
Go
news
ahead.
article to show.
Okay, go ahead.
Here it is. The Times Tribune from Northeast Pennsylvania to the North Pole. And there's our volunteer Ken, KC3ZDW right there. And with our student Owen, Ham Radio Project lets Little Harmonics kids chat with Santa Claus. So right on the really, really big front page article of them sitting in the W3 USR station.
Very good.
Yeah. So that is really cool.
Does that mean
Oh,
we are big harmonics? I
I I
think
think so.
Maybe fundamentals.
I think so. A really funny story about it though was like I on Tuesday morning, I was in the NASA press conference, and right after the NASA press conference, the Washington Post news reporter came and talked with me for about 10 minutes. And so, I've been in the news a lot lately. And then I got an email saying to contact this other reporter at the Times Tribune over here. And I had never talked to this person before. So I called her up and she said, you probably don't hear this too often, but I want to do a newspaper story about ham radio. I said, "Oh, really?" So it was kind of fun.
well, um, let's see. Next on the list, we have Andrew's phone. Go ahead, Andrew.
Hi, um, Andrew here.
Yes.
Nothing to report, just here to listen and see what's going on. Thank you. Back to net.
Oh, okay. Glad you're here. Next on the list, we have Clint, KA7OEI. Go ahead, Clint.
Um, Still need to do more testing with the field probe, but I'm looking forward to that. This evening, I've been rewinding a edgewise meter movement and
Ooh.
called, which is all kinds of fun. But you know, you can do it if you're really, really, really careful with very tiny wire. So anyway, so just it's in a radio, but so that's what matters. Anyway,
Yeah.
back to you.
You have a lot of patience.
I guess okay. We'll call it that.
Well, next on the list, we have Dave, KD0EAG. Go ahead, Dave.
Sorry, I was a little absorbed in what I was doing. Just found the biggest the fattest coin cell I ever saw. Um, I've been doing a number of things, nothing very exciting. Chasing some code for the KA9Q web stuff, and but really not contributed anything new to it yet. Um, Getting ready to go out of town for over the holiday. Um, but otherwise, nothing really worthy of report. I'll pass it back to y'all. Thanks.
Uh, okay. Jamal just sent me a thing that he wants to say hello and then go on to something else. So we'll call on Jamal.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say hello, and I missed you so much from last week. That's it. I have nothing new to share.
Okay, well, we're glad you're here.
Thank you so much.
And next on the list is David McGaw, N1HAC. Go ahead, David.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad AGU went well. Hopefully I can get there at some point, but wasn't in the cards this year. And I'm chasing ghosts these days. I've got a number of radios running off a number of antennas, and I'm finding they're interacting in weird ways. So trying to use the isolation transformers and things like that. But I'm not happy right now in the reception department. My AM Doppler radios likewise have a lot of ghosts in them that I'm trying to track down. I just can't figure them out. That Raspberry Pi's crashing for seemingly no reason at all. But I don't know if we got bit rot in the SD cards or what. But anyway, and trying to finish up things that I'm supposedly out of my primary lab at Dartmouth by the end of the year. Jim LaBelle's grants have run out. Hoping to get another project, but that's on life support right now. So a lot of things up in the air. I know where I am, but I don't know where I'm going. Back to
Well,
net.
we wish you the best of luck.
Thanks.
Find
And as I
find
had
something.
mentioned, I discovered that Dartmouth had retired me. In other
Oh,
words,
yes. You told us
because
something.
yeah, I mentioned that yeah, it's kind of weird, but since I've been using my retirement benefits, even though I'm still working, once you do that for a year, they consider you're you're retired, can't get
Yes.
benefits if you go back full time. I'd been hoping to get back full time, but that's just not going to happen, I guess.
Oh,
So opens it up for other endeavors, I guess. So
yes.
back to net.
Well, good luck with your finding.
Thanks.
Okay, next on the list is Jonathan, KC3EEY. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hi, everybody. I've been kind of occupied with a lot of non-VLF related activities, but there were some VLF related activities that are worth noting. There was an issue with Nathaniel's generator and some power outages, and so what happened was the VLF system lost power, and when it came back up, the GPS wasn't working at all. It wasn't outputting a PPS. It also wasn't responding to anything on the serial port. So then I was hoping, eventually Nathaniel would get back. Excuse me. Once he got back, we could power clear it, but then it reset again due to another outage, but the generator's fixed and it came back. But the problem is that the pulse doesn't look right, although it is good for timing. And it has been working pretty well. The noise has unfortunately increased. I don't know if that's due to the neighbors or something like that, but the noise has definitely increased a little bit. But otherwise, I'm going to do some experimentation. I'm going to send some commands to the GPS to get it, see if I could get it back working the way that it should. I didn't think that when U-Block's GPSs were power cycled, they would kind of either not come back online, or I don't know what it was, because the serial port was a USB to TTL adapter that's part of the interface board. So I don't know if when it was booting up, it sends some sort of chunk characters to the module, and it interrupted the module's boot. I don't know what happened, but it did eventually come back. But I want to try to get the PPS pulse back again, back to what it should be, and hopefully we should be okay with that. Otherwise, everything's working. Excuse me. Otherwise, everything's working. I also wanted to kind of experiment with socks and run my SAQ recording through a Butterworth filter. I don't know, maybe 30 or 50 hertz of bandwidth to try to get rid of a lot of other noise that keeps it difficult from being copied. But I think that I could get it where it's actually much better. It's still very noisy due to spherics, but I think I could get it much easier to listen to. That's all I have right now. Back to the net.
Okay. Next on the list is Franco, somebody we haven't talked to for a little bit.
Yeah, hey guys, everyone. As you can see behind me, the room is most empty. As I was telling Dave, we're about to move to Delaware because my daughter is doing her PhD in Maryland, so that's why we are everything move, and probably I'm not gonna be able to join this meeting for another month or so once we're there. So I won't be too far from Scranton, Nathaniel. So maybe I can visit you sometime
That would
once
be,
we're up there.
yeah, that would be wonderful. We'd love to have you come
Yeah.
visit.
So yeah, I can visit, but yeah, so I haven't been. All the radios are in boxes here. I don't know if you guys can see the pile of the
Yeah.
7300 boxes here. So not really been doing much lately, except for the computer and a few other things. Back to you, Dave.
Okay, thank you. Next on the list is Michael, AC0G. Go ahead, Michael.
Good evening, everybody. I'm I'm working on trying to chase down some sources of noise in my shack. I don't know what I did. I think I succeeded, but I'm not quite sure how. At least the noise profile looks a little bit better. I turned everything off and I was sequentially starting things up and trying to move things around, and something seems to have improved, but I hate not knowing exactly what it was. Anyway, I'm preparing to receive a um, one of Glenn's amplifier preamps and antenna kits, his single amplifier or single antenna kit rather, and get that set up so that we can do sort of a one site comparison between his design and the DX Engineering antenna and maybe an LZ1AQ and any other antennas I happen to throw up and have for comparison. It's also going to give me a chance to walk through the use of the field probe and see if during that process, along with doing it elsewhere, we can't come up with a way of providing a type of algorithm or a simple set of advice that may be generic enough for general use rather than something that requires jumping into a deep rabbit hole. Um, the Yeah, that's about it from here. Back to net.
Okay. Next on the list is Phil Karn, K9Q. Go ahead.
Hey there, Dave and the group. Let's see, I got to bug out of here early tonight for a microwave meeting. It's at 1900 local time. Let's see, what I've been working on lately. I've been working a lot on the utility called PCM Record. It's part of KNIQ Radio. Originally, it just records PCM to a file, but it can now handle OGG Opus in the Opus, sorry, the Opus codec in the OGG container automatically, which is supported by Radio D. It can support 32-bit floating point, either stereo or mono. It can optionally support 16-bit floating point, although that's not heavily tested or standardized. And I just recently added two flags, two options to it. One that will send output to standard output, so it can replace the PCM CAT program that already exists. And then a third option called exec, which will spawn a specified command and pipe the stream into it that replaces the PCM spawn command. So I now have one command that does three. And these are useful for hooking K9Q radio into whatever application you might have. So I'm interested in people trying this out and giving me feedback. That's about it for now, Dave.
Okay. Sounds good. Next on the list is Scott Newell. Do you have a mic tonight? Yes, you do.
I think so.
Yes, I hear you.
Hi. Well, I sent a couple of pull requests and spent time chasing down bugs in the KA9Q web this week. That's about it. So back to net.
Well, thanks for doing that. We really appreciate having extra eyes on the code.
Is that just KNIQ web or also KNIQ radio?
The pull requests were for KA9Q radio.
Okay. All right. I'll go check.
And let's see. Next on the list is Tom McDermott, N5EG. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, good evening, Dave and the group. Good to see everyone back. And Nathaniel, congratulations on such a good turnout at AGU. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Working on a small project. Hopefully I'll have something out in a week or two. Other than that, not much to report. Back to the group.
Okay. And next on the list, we have Rob Robinette. Go ahead, Rob.
Well, hello, everyone. I think I think Scott took too little credit for the improvements you've made. I wish I'm envious, Scott, of the praise I hear for your work from Glenn. He's I haven't heard him so effusive about anything in quite some time. So and of course all of us enjoy that. So anybody using Whisper Daemon, if you do get full and start everything again, you'll get his new interface, and it's there are a lot of insights that will come from it. The other I've been working on upgrading to use Phil's 32-bit float. Um, that has put me back into working on the absolute core of the code, and it's a big, long, frustrating project. But I postponed it for a year, so I'm doing it now. Um, the one other thing, we're of course we're making some progress on the antenna project. Um, Michael is should soon have a prototype, an alpha test to put up, and and he's working closely with Glenn. So thank you, Michael. That's that's a tremendous aid to our project and to I think Glenn's efforts for what he's trying to do. Um, and then one final project on the side, Franco. I've been trying to get this setup of the Orange Pi 5 connected
Yeah.
to a 888 working, and it's so close. But it appears like all the newer drivers, none of them recognize the 888. The last one, the Linux kernel 6.1, is the last one I've tested that recognizes the Cypress after the firmware is loaded and it switches to USB 3.0 mode. So I think I'll make do and work on it with the 6.1 kernel, but I'm wondering, who works on stuff like that? It looks like it's not your code. It is something about
Oh,
their driver. If you look at the kernel messages, it looks like their driver doesn't recognize um,
yeah.
what comes back from the after the upgrade. So. Could be. I don't want to drop it entirely because I think for other reasons we may want to use newer Linux kernels in the future with the 888 or with the FX3 in general. Um, I wish I just like to not drop it entirely. So if you have any insights into how to, you know, how to inform those whose programs are printing out errors, uh, that's that would make an advancement. And this is
Me,
generally for our use for HamSci. If we're going to use the 888, and it can't work with newer versions of Ubuntu for 4 years, that would be I think a problem. So that's why I'm bringing it up here.
Can I interject something real quick?
Yes.
I seem to remember reading something on, or seeing something on the YouTube site for what's his name, the guy who follows Raspberry Pi type things, about the supporter for the main developer. I think it was for the Ubuntu um, uh, distribution. I don't know if it's the one you're using, um, getting burned out and quitting.
Oh. Well, I didn't the I'm the issue is with the kernel. I don't think that Ubuntu 24, I think Ubuntu 24 uses the 6.1 kernel, so we're okay. And that's the
Okay.
LTS, distribution. So I think we're okay. But but there's
me,
just encouraging, there are tantalizing features in the newer kernel that it'd be really nice, and it might help for other reasons, might help on the Orange Pi 5. So I
Rob, do you think Jim Lil could help? Jim Lil.
I don't think so. Jim doesn't seem to be
Mm,
and
bummer.
he isn't really a kernel guy and a driver guy. He's pretty much a integration person, which
Okay,
uh,
gotcha.
and and I am too. I mean, I'm a software integration person. I'm not really. I'm standing on others' shoulders like Phil's. So, but uh, so I don't. It's not a critical issue, but it's like we need an RX 888 issue. I don't want it to go away. These are real long-term problems for a 4-year plus long project. So we want long-term support, and part of mainstream code, all that kind of stuff, parts that don't go unobtainium. So, okay.
John Ackerman, do you think could help? John,
Um,
no.
and I don't think so. I don't I
Okay.
don't know I don't know anyone who's really plugged into the Linux
Mm.
kernel community. I think that is. I'll think about
Uh,
it. See if somebody in the group. If anybody any heavyweight Linux kernel developers, uh, please refer them to me.
Yeah,
So,
there's a guy in St. Louis, his name is Jeff Geerling. He's a ham,
yeah.
and he rebuilds the Linux kernel multiple times a week.
Well, that's a good idea, Tom. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know if anyone in St. Louis area might know him. He would be a good contact to ask that kind of question.
Yearling.
Geerling, Geerling.
I think
Oh,
he has some
I think
regulations too. I
I think
forgot.
that I
Yeah.
think he actually put out he has a bunch of GitHub projects that he's
Yeah, he also does a ton of YouTube videos, and he's done a lot of kernel work.
yeah, okay.
That's
Thank you. I'm
that's who
familiar
I
with
was
him.
talking about. He has a post on his second channel, something about the burnout of the Ubuntu developer.
Well, fortunately, this isn't actually Ubuntu specific, although I haven't tried the Debian uh, distro, which is also available. The Armbian group seems to they put out distros for the Orange Pi, a whole and other ARM-based systems
Yeah,
quite frequently,
it's
and
interesting. When I look at the kernel version on 22.04
yeah,
Ubuntu, it reports 6.8.
Actually, maybe even higher now.
Yeah,
That may
so
well,
6.4.
good. But I think that the kernel version that Armbian has for the Orange Pi, they have a very stable 6.1, and
That
and
doesn't.
then the next kernel they've implemented is I tried. They had a 6.10, the latest published kernel, and the 6.10 the USB didn't recognize the Cypress, um, and 6.12 doesn't either. But I
I
can't. I don't know. I don't want to go back and I'm sure the first thing the kernel guys will ask me is, well, when did it stop working? Well, that means I've got to go through and build, download and install each kernel in turn and see if it works. That's a several day project, and I'm not.
real the real-time changes in the kernel that you were interested in didn't come in until I think 6.8. They
I
didn't come
think
in fully.
they've done some even further stuff in
Yeah,
uh, 6.12,
yeah.
and so
I
that
think my Pi 5s are running 6.12.
yeah. Well, if the Orange Pi could run it, didn't you get one? I thought I sent I had an Orange Pi that I thought I sent it to Michael or you.
You didn't send it to me, but I have some.
I
Okay.
have it.
Okay.
I haven't
Okay.
tried loading anything on it recently, though.
Okay. Well, hang on to it. It may be useful. Maybe. It's like 99.9% useful.
do you think this is just an ARM related issue, or is it also
Yeah.
affect x86?
I've never seen this problem in the x86.
Okay.
Well,
It's
the other thing, Rob, if you reproduce the problem with a Raspberry Pi, you get a lot of help. But the Orange Pi 5, there's probably 1% of the people they use it.
I
So I don't
tried
know if
yeah, I mean, that's why I understand that we've I've been trying to get Radio D to work on a regular Raspberry Pi
Right.
5. No, it's not going to
No?
happen. No, not going to happen.
No?
Right, unless Phil knows something, but I went through and took Phil's latest code and did all the wisdom optimizations, and it
Even at
it
32 megasample per second or something
oh well,
really
I'm
easy
sure. Well,
peasy.
of course, you turn down the sample rate at 64 megasamples. The proc R88 thread, the one that does the copy of the
No,
data.
no. What I'm saying is, can you produce the issue of going from USB 2 to USB 3 with the Raspberry Pi? Even
Oh
at
yes,
32.
it
I
did.
don't care about
Oh
the
yeah,
sample rate.
no. On the Raspberry Pi, it goes from it does the switch and works.
Oh,
Uh,
bummer.
after
Because then
after
that's a Orange Pi problem, which is going to be much smaller
that's
slide,
yeah, so
Jeff Gerling will help
the
you on
kernel
that.
really the kernel on the Pi 5 is the Linux kernel 8 or something. It's relatively new.
I think it might be newer than that.
Yeah. I can go look at it in on the side, but
No,
when we
in
get
that
there.
case, if you can get it. Sorry, Dave, if you still have someone in the list, go ahead. I mean to.
No, we've gone through the list. So
Okay.
this is keep on this discussion.
Rob,
Yeah.
That's why I always go last because I
Rob,
That's true.
with
yes,
regard to the Raspberry Pi 5, it does work very well with an AirSpy R2. In fact, I've had to use it recently
Oh, good.
on my 70 centimeter receiver because I have so many channels and I'm using the Opus encoder that the Pi 4 wasn't quite enough. So it works well in that case anyway, but only
yes,
20 mega samples.
It doesn't
Which
work at
sample rate,
64.
Phil?
Yeah, it's a 20 mega sample, but I mean, it still has its
20
uses.
meg, yeah.
Like, good point. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the FFT threads were like 50% of a core, so each one core. But the proc thread, the one that does the copy of the data, I guess, from USB to
Yeah.
that was a hit. That was at 99%.
Um, really?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I just
If,
I reiterated something I mentioned earlier. Raspberry Pi folks have been working with the memory manufacturer and have published some tweaks to dramatically improve the throughput of a Raspberry Pi 5, which has been mostly limited by memory access timing, and that may have an impact on.
that could have a
I,
major
I was just
impact.
gonna say it's probably due to memory bandwidth limits.
Right, and I
Sure.
just put a link to Jeff Geerling's link article on that from earlier this month in the messages. So that would be worth trying for condemning the Raspberry 5 and Pi 5 entirely.
Yeah. Okay. Um, okay. Well, this is okay. Oh, there it goes. Jeff Geerling. Yes. Unfortunately, I tried to use one of his software packages. It was for internet gateway stuff, and it was I could not get it to work. So I struggled. I did. So I've had some encounters with him. Okay. Well, I think that's all I had. Is a
How much is the Orange Pi 5? I mean, how much do you pay for that?
um, you can buy Orange Pi 5 now. I saw it for about $90,
Because the
including
Raspberry
what?
Pi 5 is about the same price,
Yes,
and you
yeah,
get 10,
yes.
100 times more support, so that's
100
why.
times more support, but half the cores, and that's the problem. Is that there are not enough cores in the Pi
Yeah, you
4
want
to
the cake,
support.
you need it too, huh?
Yeah, well, that's right. It almost you get, as I say, I get 99.9% of it with the with the rock chip. I'm surprised that there must be something in the works at Raspberry Pi for more cores, but I don't know. Does Broadcom make a SoC with more than 4 ARM cores in it? I don't know. I mean, Raspberry Pi seems pretty tied to Broadcom. So anyway, that's the memory timing thing is exactly what was the problem there is that it's the thing that's at 90, the thread that's at 99% is the one that's doing the data copying. 125 megabytes per second of data copying.
Well, Gerling notes that you get almost a 30%, 33% increase with multi-threads if you do the tweak. So anyway, so
okay, I was hoping for more. If we're pegged at 99% right now,
well, I mean, but I wouldn't be surprised if, well, I mean, anyway.
I don't know how hard is it. I don't know. I'll look at his article. I don't believe in overclocking. That seems like a real band-aid.
I don't think you need to overclock it. I think it's optimizing timings. I think it's just fruit they haven't picked before on the Raspberry Pi until recently.
Okay, well, it's quite a long article, and I'll have to. I'll put
Clint, you said you were working on the field probe. You have one, and you were testing it, or what kind of activity have you been doing with the field probe to date?
Well, I have the two antenna one, so I mean they're not the actively decoupled monopole. So I have this. I've done some preliminary testing with this, and it seems to work as advertised. This is the one with the easier to get mid-supply chip, whatever you call it.
Right.
And
so I think I have that
rail splitter.
Same one.
Yeah, rail splitter. Yeah, and I can't imagine the rail splitter being, for HF making any difference at all. But yeah, I mean, it works as advertised. I live only a few miles away from megawatts of ERP on the FM and television broadcast, and it didn't seem to be overloading when I walked around with the analyzer. But I need to do more testing, at least not with the telescoping antennas that were shipped with it.
Right. Well, my interest, of course, is, and it connects with how we might use it in respect to advising people about siting antennas for the DAISY grant in particular, but then just in general, demonstrating and kind of baking in its usefulness to people, how we go about using it and reading what it's showing us on a tiny ultra essay or something like that, to come to some conclusions about your local environment and make antenna decisions. So that's kind of what I'm interested in.
I think as far as that goes, you first need to get a baseline, and that would be a tiny essay and a field probe in the middle of BFE. And then if you can do that and they proved more than one person can replicate similar readings, then I think you have the possibility of having a best case baseline, and then it would be whoever is driving the project to decide how bad it can be before you declare this site to be not scientifically viable, which sounds like a whole bag of worms or kettle of fish or.
Yeah, well, see, you want to avoid the total bag of worms. I enjoy listening to Glenn because on the one hand, he knows a lot about this, but on the other hand, it's kind of amazing how well he appreciates the rabbit hole that this is in danger of sucking everybody down into, whereas from a practical point of view, with respect to just getting some data gathered, how deeply do we really need to go? And so therein lies the kind of dividing line. I have fun walking around and playing with toys and sort of measuring things and figuring stuff out, but is that the kind of thing that we want to burden the average user with. But at the same time, the device promises to be useful. So how can it be useful to the average user?
Well,
That's what I'm.
I mean, I have heard some discussion on you would want to avoid citing some of these newer sites next to the Jacobs Ladder factory, and between the Jacobs Ladder factory and the power station and the welding shop. I mean, I don't know where I guess that implies you're making qualitative measurements of the viability of the receive side. And I guess at some point, once we know how to measure it, how do you define what is good enough for for what the goals are of the project are? I mean, I think we've skirted around that because we can't know that yet. Would that be fair?
I think so. On the one hand, I'm kind of thinking string up an antenna and tell me what it shows, or show everybody what it shows. And if you see the ginormous radiated fields from local sources, okay, that's a problematic site, but you don't need a field probe for that. I mean, you just
Yeah.
need to know that you can't receive anything. So how far down below that threshold do we have to go, and what equipment do we need to know that we're there um, before we can decide this is a viable site for our purposes, for the HamSCI purposes? I think for exploring the theory that Glenn is involved in, and understanding some of the niceties and peculiarities and everything of what's happening at your site, the field probe is is awesome, and maybe a lot more work can actually be done in the area. But uh, there's this kind of conflict between the practical, we got to get some stuff out the door and it has to be usable and get us some data that can be worked with, versus um, let's have fun and walk around and determine and measure the things and try to figure out what the hell they are.
Right,
I,
right. Well, I mean, the other issue is there are probably people who have quiet sites who don't have quiet receive setups, and you're an example of you don't know how good your receive site is until you clean stuff up around your house.
yeah,
It may be
right.
good, maybe terrible. I mean, there's several layers of that. I mean, we don't necessarily want to discount stuff that's a side that could be good if they didn't bring the noise out to their antenna from their shack, which is what you're in the project of trying to avoid doing. And having the field probe would could tell them that they have an intrinsically quiet side if they can only keep from bringing their noise outside with their coax cable. Yeah, I mean, but you're right. I mean, there's that old saying: we have to sit or get off the pot or something close to that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Well, my expectation is, I don't think we can't go through a process where we send out a field probe and make people walk around. I don't think I think that would be, that's just, that I think is too demanding of this, of people we want part of this. But so my thought was that, yeah, people where they seem to have a reasonably good chance that that their QTH is a good candidate. And again, that's we haven't decided the criteria of what performance we want out of sites. But given that they met that criteria, then we send them a kit, and maybe, I mean, if and they install it, and we look at the results. And if they're not good, then we go to a second stage and say, okay, try this, try this. Well, I think we better send you a field probe and to go through that would be kind of my how I envision this. So, does that make sense to you, Michael? And
Yeah, it's hard to say a site's going to be good if a person hasn't had any kind of receiver there before. Yet you have
yeah,
to have some experience at least. And failing that, if the person, and that may be one of the entry requirements. I mean, one of the entry requirements or candidate requirements might be, can you show us some evidence that your site is not a disaster and incapable of receiving signals? If you can't, well, we've got other places we can send the equipment to, right? But if your site really does look like there's a possibility, well, gee, we may be able to really get some primo quality. And so here's the next step we take in order to determine that. Or, maybe good is just good enough. As I think if you
Yeah.
look at the DX engineering data that's coming in from the antenna that I have up now, it's not bad data.
Yeah.
If it's sufficient for the DAISY grant, man, I mean, the only impediment to its deployment is you need a space to stick up a vertical antenna, assuming you don't have HOH stuff getting in the way. And
We got to work on
you
the
have to
ground.
assemble it. You have to assemble it, and it does
Yes.
require a little bit of work to assemble it. There's some non-standard type of plugs on it. There's an RCA plug instead of a regular sort of RF type plug that we're used to using, and that kind of thing. Yeah, you need a ground rod or something to stick it in. But it is not my best antenna here at my site, but it's good. It's better than some other antennas that I've had strung up. So it's not a bad antenna. So and I expect the SA that Glenn is developing is going to rival it and maybe exceed it. I mean, it may be a marvelous antenna. It may be cheaper, and which is why I'm excited to
Yeah.
participate in the development and testing of it. But if it's the kind of thing where we can sort of give it to people and say, okay, string it up, because we know that if your site is not a disaster, it's not right next to the local radio station or power plant or solar collection field or something like that, it'll work. Then that would keep it simple and practical for purposes of, most people, I would think. We can keep working on the SA though. I mean, that I think has probably got years of research potentially embedded in it. So
Yeah.
but
yeah.
I think
Well,
using the field probe too, I mean, we still do need to flesh out some practical guidelines for, okay, you got this thing in hand. How do you use it? How do you
I
configure your
think
tiny ultra SA? Um, how do you walk around your yard? How do you interpret what you're seeing, and that kind of thing.
I think Glenn is scheduling such a session with you. So
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, yeah, we've got a good baseline with the DXE, and we'll see if there's something that's more attractive. But I don't know, when there's a decision point about when we need to order antennas and start shipping things out. I've thought it was kind of early summer, but if there's a different deadline, then let me know.
I think targeting early summer's pretty good.
Okay. Well then, we'll certainly know by then.
Yeah, we got plenty of time, I think, for testing the SA and the DXE.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, have you been using the N4CY loop preamp
I
at all?
have been. That's in my antennas, that's the one that I'm labeling LZ1. Because it's just got the LZ1 design part. And it may be, it comes as a box. It doesn't come with a recommended antenna exactly. And I hooked it up to a couple of different loops. The loop it's currently hooked up to is actually copper pipe in an octagon, about a meter and a half in diameter, roughly.
All right, yeah, I'm using about a 1.3 meter loop of 12 gauge solid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the basic antennas, 1 meter loop of whatever you
Mm.
got. But yeah, that's one of the ones I'm having trouble with right now, as I mentioned earlier. Is I don't know if I'm getting oscillations on it or what, but as I touch the cable, the signal changes into one of my receivers.
Hmm.
That's the ghost I'm tracking down.
Well, that's where Glenn starts to wax real poetic about all the crazy stuff that
Oh yeah.
and and just you know the way these electromagnetic waves propagate and bathe us every which way, it's hard to fathom.
Yeah, if there's anything you do to your coax that changes your receiver, then
Mm.
your coax is part of the antenna.
Oh well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
You know, the antenna is out from the house quite a ways, but within the shack, I've got a situation where I just touch the coax going into a receiver and the signal changes. And I'm thinking a bad connection, but I just have to touch it. It just, well, it's like that classic situation where you're getting digital logic. You're tracing a ghost down, and when you put the scope probe on it, it fixes it. So you ship it with a scope probe.
Yeah, love it. I will say that there's always a wife factor, and the amount of wire I got dangling out in one corner of my yard, it does in fact have an effect on other local environmental situations and the propagation of certain messages and so
Well,
on. So,
you just got to have your dipole double as a clothesline.
oh, that'll go down great. That's the woman's work, hanging up the clothes to dry. No, I don't think
Well,
that would
yeah.
work.
Well, if you wanted to dry faster, you just flip your amplifier on.
No, I have to come up with something more imaginative. If I could get an antenna to double as a kiln, my wife is interested in pottery, and so maybe I can use a kiln for um,
Right.
make it a very low frequency coil, a loading coil.
Yeah, we
That
had
might
a
work.
talk about foil antennas at one point. You know, you can take a pole and wrap it with strips of foil to make a
Mm.
loaded antenna, and you set that up as a vertical, and you can put a birdhouse on top of it.
There you
And the guy, you know, he took it down and he asked, "Well, where'd the pole go? The birdhouse?"
go.
Hmm. It's okay. I think I'm going to say 73 for the evening. I'm still recovering from AGU. But I think I'm um I'm going to take off for the next 2 weeks for Christmas and then for New Year's. So I plan on coming back on January 6th, I believe. Is that Monday?
Okay.
So
Nathaniel, quick question before you go. I got a email from a fellow from West Virginia University who
mm-hmm.
he's got they got a big radio club there that's active and they want to get involved with HamSCI. What would you like me to tell him?
Do you know what they want to do?
Oh, they want to do something with hardware because they were talking about how they've got permission to go on the roof of their building and run cables to their club shack and all kinds of stuff. So
Do they want to um run one of these personal space weather stations?
I'm sure they'd love to do that. Sure.
I mean, that's probably the thing to recommend to them if they want to do hardware.
Well, I mean, but do we have a defined process for onboarding somebody?
We have it, so not particularly. So I mean, I guess it depends. Are they buying their own hardware or are they asking for us to provide it?
We didn't get that far into it.
Yeah. I mean, so the defined process, I guess, would be send them to Gary McKeaton, and Gary should be able to point them in the right direction to the right places on the website.
All right. Will do.
And that's something we need to make sure we have tightened up is we have to have an onboard a process on the website where it's like if you want to join and put a personal space weather station, here's the instructions, which we've had before, and I think that sort of thing's in process. I'm not sure to what level that's all set up right now. But yeah, I would point them to Gary McKeaton.
All right, we got it.
And there is a lot of information on the website already. If you go to hamsci.org/PSWS, Gary's done a really nice job reorganizing that landing page. And there's a whole link to the Whisper Demon Grape system with an overview and the purpose and um the two different options for either building it yourself or to apply for a grant. So it really is all on the website.
All right.
Just go to hamsci.org/PSWS.
I will refer them to that.
Okay. Yeah, and tell them to look for the Whisper Demon Grape option.
I'm looking for it. I don't find it. Let's see. Where would I find projects?
Hamsci.org/PSWS.
I just time hamsci.org and I was trying to see how I get there from there. And it's not clear to me.
Go under quick links right on the top page.
Let's see, quick links.
And it says Hamsci Personal Space Weather Station.
I see that, and then it says about getting involved, projects, meetings, search.
And it says components.
Get involved, projects, meetings. That's what well, I can share my screen. I'm doing this
Yeah.
not because I couldn't find it, but I think that if I have a hard time finding it,
Right.
it would be, it's not likely others would have a hard time. So this is, here's where I am. You can watch me fumble around.
Okay.
Okay. So I just typed in hamsci.org and I got here.
Yes.
And there's things scrolling here. Join HamSci, I see that. All the
Quick
credits.
links.
Where is quick links?
Right below the credits.
A gray box below the credits. Second
Oh, right
item.
there. Oh, okay. Well, that's okay.
Get
And
involved, and
and
then the
then-
PSWS.
Okay. Okay. Now well, thank you. I don't think I would have made it here without your help. So I would have gone to Google and searched for it. So it's great. That's great that put that up.
Yeah. And then if you click, see there's under components, there's one that says Whisper Demon. So right
yes,
above the
yes,
pictures.
yeah.
Yeah, click
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah. It says,
So if you click that, it takes you there.
yeah. And okay. Fine.
Hey, can
Okay,
I,
well,
jump in here and ask something?
yeah, of course.
Tom McDermott, N5EG, are you still there?
Yep, still
There
here.
you are. Hey, Scott, N5TNL mentions that you have been running KNIQ radio into GNU radio. Is that true?
Yes, I'm using Franco's module.
Oh, can you talk about it? I mean, is it working well?
Oh, yeah, it works well. One of the videos I did I'm using it, demodulating WWV and plotting the carrier and the spectrum, things like that.
Excellent.
It's on video number 2 or 3, I think.
Okay, under your name?
Yeah, just go to YouTube and I'm at sign N5EG.
Got it. Okay.
And you'll find the video series there.
Excellent. Does it handle metadata, or do you tune it manually in KNIQ radio and you just look at the data stream?
I tuned it manually and just displayed the data stream coming out of it.
I guess it'd be
However,
nice
if you bring a wide enough bandwidth stream in, you can retune in GNU Radio just by mixing it with a complex LO.
Oh, sure, but you can't send commands back to GNU radio.
No.
I guess if you really want to make it slick, you could have the plugin automatically create the channel in KNIQ radio and send necessary commands to it. And then, if you wanted to retune it, do that from KNIQ radio. That would be nice.
Yeah, I don't know how the details of that work. Franco did all of that.
Oh, he did the plugin?
Yes, Franco did the
Okay.
plugin.
Oh, I think he's already checked out tonight.
Okay.
I see you're in Medford, Oregon. I didn't realize you'd gone there. How long you been
Yeah.
there? My sister-in-law lives there.
Oh, who's that?
Uh, uh, you mean my wife's sister, Carolee?
Okay.
We were actually what's her married name? I can't remember.
It's okay.
These days. Yeah, we're going to get up there one of these years.
Yeah, I live at the Rogue Valley Manor,
Yeah.
and they have a radio club, but apparently it's kind of limited by like 40 over 9 noise.
Do you happen to know Patty and 6BIS?
Yeah, I ran into Patty once about 2 months ago.
Oh yeah, she's an old friend of mine.
Okay. Oh, good. Small world.
Rob, you are aware you're sharing screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading about. I
didn't read those colors anyway. So, God,
yes,
I can't stand those oddball color combinations. Like dark blue and black.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, this is. Oh yeah, this is somebody from my user group. I'm supporting about 100 sites, so there's things come up that I never thought before. So
okay, well, let me know how far you get with the new PCM record. I've done a lot of work on it.
Yeah, believe me, I'm Phil. Thank you so much, and it looks. I mean, I'm going to eat my shoes about performance. I mean, it actually, when I ran PCM record, it was like it would take 0.7% of the CPU and create all the files at once. And creates all of the files for all the streams simultaneously.
Yeah, it should be fast.
And I realized, I've been seeing running individual WD records was far less, maybe 10 times less efficient. So it may bump things like the Lenovo may become usable again.
I don't know why yours would have been slower other than buffering. I mean, there's really nothing to it. You're just copying data.
Well, but it's just a whole lot more copying, because if I had 10 receivers, I had 10 instances, which are getting 10 copies of the whole stream, and then parsing each one parsing out just the one stream it wanted out of that. So there was just a lot of memory copying going on, I think, unnecessarily, and context switches between the kernel and base and just all kinds of
I mean,
for the CPU.
PCM record itself is that fast, and you should be able to just run. If you happen to have some that overlap on the same channel at different times, you can just run them all in parallel. Like I was saying.
I'm just running it. The reason it's taking me so long is that previously with the Kiwi recorder, I was writing the WAV files into the same directory that I was decoding them. Now, with using your PCM recorder in its most efficient and appropriate way, you're writing all the files into one directory, and which is fine, perfect. But that directory has to be different than the one I decode in. So that
Oh,
involves splitting up, but just it's a lot of moving variables around and making them to full paths, and it's
yeah.
just
Well,
you know, it's
you can decode in any directory you want, really.
well, you can, but it maintains the Whisper decoder maintains state and history information that it uses. So you need to actually have for each band, each Whisper decode
Oh,
band.
I know,
You
I've done
need,
that.
yeah, you need to do the decoding in its own subdirectory.
Right, I know, I've
So
done that for
yeah,
FT4 and FT8 also. So
yeah.
I just have it drop the recordings into that same directory with all the state for that particular frequency.
Yeah, well, that works for what you're doing, and but Whisper Demon's doing a lot more stuff. So it's
Okay,
uh,
I'm
so
glad it's
anyway,
working.
but no, it's just it's marvelous, and it's just forcing me to face it, work on a piece of code that I found very frustrating about 2 or 3 years ago. And with advancing age, now I have to go back and face this demon once again.
Yeah.
So,
But the only remaining issue that might still be worth discussing is how to pass metadata from KNIQ radio into whatever program is consuming the data.
well,
Scott has added these options to the wave header. I've created, at least for the Opus codec, I've added, the odd container. I've added external file attributes, and I've also put stuff into the file name. So, I mean, there's like 4 different ways we can go here, and I'm trying them all.
yeah. Well, I don't know what the radio scientists want in the metadata. I bet you it would be nice if they knew things like where did this WAV file come from? Of course, it's coming all that comes from the structure of the accounts on the PSWS server right now. So you don't
Sure.
really need all that information. That metadata is
Well,
already in
what
the
I
sensitive
find,
data.
and I keep trying to talk about this because I think it is so useful, is a free field text string that comes all the way from the antenna into the file that's being recorded from it is extremely useful in figuring out where things came from.
I could see that. It's a
Yeah.
I could see
Along
that.
with the frequency and the time and the mode and the sample rate and format, all that kind of other stuff you need.
Yeah, that all that's pretty much fixed by the PSWS environment. So we don't need to record that information for this project.
Well, I
But
assume there's some kind of description to tell you where the data came from, not
oh,
just
well, there's accounts. There's whole there each HamSCI uh, site has an account. You have an account. I created it for you. It's your
yeah.
account, right? That's
But then
a
how do I distinguish between different antennas that I might have?
You'd have to, well, I don't know. Build is that stuff having different, what do you call it? Not your terminology is you have a station, and in a station you have um, not decoders, but
Instruments.
I'm sorry?
Well, under your
Instruments.
station, you have instruments.
Instruments. Yes, multiple instruments.
So an
So,
instrument would be an antenna?
mm,
No, an instrument is something that by itself generates data. So it would be a receiver. Now you can document what antenna you're using on in that station, of course.
Um, well, let's say I have several antennas and several receivers all producing information on the same frequency at the same time. How do I distinguish them?
Well, you're going to be collecting that data and then uploading it from a particular computer or multiple computers or
Well, it can be either. I mean, I might have it all coming through one computer.
well, what you want to do is you want to establish several stations, one station with one instrument on it.
Okay.
Each one of those, it identifies itself when it does an upload, and it will keep the data from the different stations separate.
Okay. So you have substations then, one for each antenna or something like that.
no, it doesn't
Oh,
work quite
no.
that way.
No.
You have to, no. You have to have different accounts. These
Oh,
these end up being a Linux account associated with a station.
it's getting complicated.
And so you need multiple stations if you have multiple antennas.
Oh,
Michael Howen does this.
okay. This is why I think having some kind of free format text string embedded in the file is a really nice, useful thing.
Yes, it's a good idea.
Yeah. I found it useful more than once, figuring out where did I get this file from? Which antenna, which receiver did this come from?
Yes.
Well, normally we're getting data uploaded in digital RF, which allows for a virtually unlimited amount of metadata to be assigned to the file, or even all the way down to individual readings.
Okay. So you can trace all that stuff back and have,
Yes.
yeah. And the important thing also is to carry it through as much as you can, carry through automatically from the source. So, it doesn't depend on you editing some configuration file in a bunch of places, or the data will be written
Yes.
incorrectly.
Yes.
Yeah, it's useful to carry it through from the source. So you only have to edit it in one place. I mean, somewhere I have to tell it what antenna I'm using. Ideally, I do that right at the beginning of the chain, and then it gets carried through to all the data automatically. I have a long-standing principle in computers that if it doesn't get automated, it won't get done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you create a station and create an instrument, you can record all that, and then each time we uh, do an upload, it's associated with a particular station. So we know what the station was, we know what the instrument was, and we know what all the comments are. And you can also include metadata with each individual uploaded file, all the way down to each individual reading if it's that detailed.
Yeah. I'm just wondering I guess it's up to the station to decide how that data flows
Well,
into your uploads.
well, I've been using the Whisper Daemon file as the source of all configuration. So
Yeah.
when Whisper Daemon's running K9Q, I can't I modify your configuration
Yeah,
file
yeah. You've been
for the Mac.
overwriting my config files. It's a
Yes,
problem.
well, I need to tell you about it. Even
Yeah, I
uh,
updated my antenna descriptions, and then I noticed it said no antenna. I looked and saw the file had been changed. I
yes,
realized I was
well.
probably doing it.
Well, it will now you can update it. You can put it in, but you put that antenna description in your Whisper Daemon configuration file where you
Yeah.
define the receiver. So there's one place where
Yeah,
you
but look,
define.
you're a client of K9Q radio. They're separate packages. We've had this discussion before.
Yes, well,
I mean, yes, you can provide my package as a convenience, but it's a separate package. Should be configured separately
that
because it has
is,
other uses. I mean, I'm using it for other things besides Whisper Daemon.
there is a way for you to do that. But anyway, we'll talk about it offline.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Well, everybody's going to run into these things eventually. It's the
uh,
kind of stuff that, one person may run into. It seems esoteric, and then everybody runs into it.
Well, I get, as you guys saw when I shared a screen earlier, I get all of these, people with queries about their configurations all the time. And,
Yeah. Well, the
and so
less you have to configure, the better it'll be for you, right?
that's why I try to put it in one place. You can't expect anybody to go off and configure install their K9Q and do it themselves. Yeah, you'll have a very small subset of Whisper Daemon users that
Yeah,
are
but
up for that.
KNIQ radio has other uses besides Whisper Daemon. At
I
least what
under,
I signed up
understand.
for.
I
That's what I'm
understand.
saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I understand.
I mean,
That's not,
Clint just last week was saying that, if I did some things, I could have it used everywhere.
I think if you put a
That's me.
SOAP, if you implemented a SOAP API, so that's I think you would get far more customer support calls than you're getting from the Whisper Daemon user
Yeah,
group.
well, great.
Well,
Every good deed no good deed goes unpunished. Yeah. Okay, so tell
yeah,
me what's a good client to use, good generic client to use for SOAPy that I could use to test all this? SDR Sharp, is that one?
others would know. I don't. I don't use
Okay.
any of those programs. I can't tell
Maybe
you.
Clint would know.
I see things like people mentioning SDR Sharp and SDR console and GTRX or something. Um, there's, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I can't compete
Chat
with any of
GB.
those. I can't compete
No,
with any of those programs on flashy user features. So if I could just marry them to KNIQ radio, that would be great.
that's what they want. They're just
Yeah.
I think many of them, not all of them, are architected, not are tied. at least offer as an option talking through this SOAPy interface. So there'd be there's the library that the Windows program, whatever it is, talks to this library. That library then communicates over the
Right,
network
right,
to a corresponding SOAPy server that
right,
then communicates with your K9Q radio.
right. And the logical thing for me to do is basically help Clint's using my code already, which is that I can simulate a front end dongle that covers, say, one band. And then the radio can pretend that it's talking directly to that dongle and do whatever it wants with that stream,
Well,
which is
I,
basically
I,
how the web SDRs are working now at Utah, as far as I know, or at least
mm,
experimentally.
the web SDRs at Utah are going through a crazy uh, trans signal propagation chain, right? I mean, they go, although I think you've simplified it for a while. You take the multicast stream
Well,
and
I did have it that way, but when we updated the server, that that hard drive, I haven't put that back on the B-Link yet.
oh,
So we had a private server that went from multicast to and inserted it. Let's see. No, actually, we had it spitting out to a FIFO actually.
You might want to use my newer PCM record. It might be a good utility for that, Clint, because it can take a stream and spit at the standard output, or what basically invoke a program, whatever you want with it, and it can
Right,
just give you the raw data.
right. Yeah, I ended up taking PCM cat and using it to get it where I needed to go. I've used both ALSA and also send it to a FIFO. Neither one
Okay.
worked fine. The
Yeah.
FIFO has slightly less propagation delay.
Which one?
The FIFO does.
Of course, at these high data rates, if the propagation delay is probably not that long anyway.
Um,
I mean, you're sampling at like a megahertz, right? Or close to it.
well, yeah. I mean, there's about 125, 130 millisecond in the PA3 FWM Web SDR, but for some reason, going like if you, when I've run K9Q radio here, and sent it out to the speaker, I get several hundred milliseconds propagation delay, and you say it's not supposed to be that high, but
It shouldn't be.
it should be lower or it should be that
Or
high.
are you using my monitor program?
Yeah,
Okay. Well, the monitor program will actually show you how much is in the queue for each channel in
right,
milliseconds. Yeah.
right,
And if you have packet loss, it tends to grow, or packet resequencing, it will definitely grow in you, and it will usually not shrink unless either the squelch closes, which is applicable only to an FM channel, or you manually reset it.
right.
That's still a tough problem to solve, is the trade-off between packet loss rates and delay.
Right. In the case of multicast, I mean, this is local loopback in a machine. So,
Oh, okay.
I mean, it shouldn't
Let
have been.
me,
I mean, I can't make it lower than that. But then,
yeah. Well, any jitter, any delay there might be due to scheduling latencies in your CPU, depending on how loaded it is.
right. I mean, for the testing I was doing, there was nothing else running other than K9Q radio. But, but
isn't there a kind of fundamental, the 100 millisecond cadence in
It's
the
actually
mix?
20.
The
I
20?
mean, it's 20. Well, the blocks are 20,
No,
but
I'm talking about the cadence in the kernel, not in your stuff.
oh,
In
in the kernel,
I think the kernel,
shouldn't be any.
I think the kernels kind of has a fundamental heartbeat of 100 milliseconds.
No,
Yeah,
that's the old kernel. The newer ones, especially the real time ones,
I'm sure
keep
that I'm not
internet
talking.
scheduling. At least
Yeah.
they're supposed to. Uh,
Okay. Well,
so let's see. I mean, the only real latency in all of KNIQ radio is the latency to build a 20 millisecond frame to pass to the FFT. And then everything beyond that really depends on CPU speed. There will be jitter depending on scheduling latencies and so forth. But I don't think there's any built-in delay after that 20 milliseconds. Because yeah, the data once the frame becomes ready, everybody gets woken up. The threads run immediately. They do all their inverse. Yeah, there's really nothing to wait for. So it's 20 milliseconds plus scheduling latencies plus CPU execution speed. And then over Ethernet to a program like Monitor, it tries to track the jitter and set the buffer large enough so that it includes the jitter, and that can sometimes make it unnecessarily long, especially over Wi-Fi, where there can be link level retransmissions that cause packets to arrive rather late. Over Ethernet, I usually see less than that, but I mean, that would be an interesting thing to try, is to try to instrument this to see exactly where all these latencies are coming from. I've never really tried to pin them down. I mean, you may have a lot of cores, but things tend to run synchronously. You know, when you have one of those 20 millisecond frames, a whole lot of threads get woken up at the same time, and they all have to fight over the available cores, and only some of them can win right away. Having a lot of main memory and a big cache helps too.
Well, if you wanted to go experiment on Hoger's Pi 5,
Well, Pi 5 is probably just not worth it because I mean, it doesn't have enough cycles total to keep up. Then I'm thinking about latencies on faster machines where there are plenty of cycles, but you still see latencies that are longer than you should. Uh, I have to rethink this, but the last time I did, I really couldn't see anything. Well, there's also queuing in the USB interface, but at this speed, the latency should be tiny. I mean, sub-millisecond delays on buffering from the USB, even with large frames, because the data rate's so high. But I suppose it might be possible to start instrumenting various things, read the clock, and see just how much time has passed. Of course, for scientific analyses, delay is usually not an issue. I mean, scientific analyses are rarely delay sensitive. I mean, if you get your data within a day, you know, you're probably happy. But this whole subject I was talking about earlier of metadata and the output from KNIQ radio is probably worth a little thought. I mean, I'm putting all the metadata in that I can think of that would be useful. If anybody can think of anything else to be useful to add, I can certainly put that in too. Scott Newell's added code to put some of that metadata in the wave header. I've added, you know, that metadata to the OGG header for OGG Opus files, and I could implement PCM over OGG as well to be able to use that same container metadata format. And of course, I've also told you about how I add as extended file attributes on files, at least when they're on a file system that supports them. So there are lots of ways of skinning this cat. But if there's any information I'm not including, please let me know.
I'm feel like I'm in running in water to catch up with you, Phil. It just I can't. I get so many now. I have so many
Well,
support.
I get into
Yes.
phases. I don't do anything for a month, and then I really start doing something
Well,
rapid.
it's you're being very productive. I'm envious. So it's,
Okay, so let's see. What do I do in the way of attributes? The file encoding, you know, whether it's 16-bit, whether it's signed, whether it's 32-bit float, whether it's opus, so forth, the sample rate, the number of channels, the SSRC, the carrier frequency, the last preset like AM, SSB, or USB, which is actually an index into a file. Let's see, the source, the sender of the multicast stream, the multicast group address and the Unix start time, the description from the antenna, if there is one, the starting offset, if there is one. Oh, and the receiver gain, if it happens to be fixed. That's only if in the linear demodulator and with the AGC turned off, which is your case. So I'm now emitting gain on all of those channels. That might be useful when you're processing these floating point files. What else can I add? Reminds me of an old Monty Python routine where the fire brigade asked them his shoe size before they send over a fire truck.
Well, this is the longest stretch of silence I've heard in this group
Well,
since I.
doing other things.
Okay, so
Sure.
what are you, Phil? I haven't looked at your latest check-in, so I don't. What I've done is, and what I've done for Scott is that I fix your use one of your commits on Whisper Demon sites for your stuff. And then I've been letting every time people run Whisper Demon, they get Scott's latest check-in for his K9Q web.
Okay. You mean,
So
I just incorporated, accepted a couple pull requests from Scott for
okay,
his modifications. They didn't seem to conflict,
okay,
so I just accepted them.
okay. Well, Scott, just be aware that I haven't chosen, or I haven't made Whisper Demon use. I think the commit I have I've specified is your commit from easily a month ago. So let's see. I'm just
I just
looking.
received these pull requests recently. Scott pointed them to me. They arrived in the last couple of days, and I just approved them.
Yeah, it's not your fault or anything. It's just I just want Scott to know that
Yeah.
to make sure that he understands how Whisper Demon is dealing with your versions and his versions. His versions are the newest.
Okay. So
Your versions are I'd have to change.
the most recent commits on my version are Scott's pull requests, which I just did within the last
Okay.
hour.
Okay.
The ones before that were my additions today and yesterday of the standard out and exec options to PCM record. I
I see
haven't really
that.
changed much else. I mean, a couple cosmetic changes.
Well, maybe let's see, when is this? So this is from Sunday, December 8th. So that's what
Yeah,
I get by.
that's before my current PCM record.
Yeah. Well, this is I don't want to do this at this site. I don't want to. I want to. Okay. Well, I'll go and verify that your latest commit works with Scott's latest commit, and I'll make
Yeah,
that the defaults for Whisper sites.
please. I
Whisper
don't know
Demon sites.
what else has Scott done besides the stuff he sent me that I just committed.
Scott would have to tell you.
Yeah.
He's been changing the speed and how it centers and doesn't display below 0 and supports full span to 64 megabytes. It zooms in. He
Oh,
can.
wait a minute. You're talking about KNIQ web, not KNIQ radio.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm talking about parts of KNIQ radio.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, I don't know that he uses any new parts. I do believe that there was a version that needed, you put out some additional information that K9Q Web needed. And there was a synchronization between your code and his code at one time.
That's right. That's right. I made major changes to PCM record and his changes for the older version, but we've resolved that now.
Okay, well,
He added stuff to the wave header for more metadata, and I just incorporated that tonight. So all the metadata that he wants, that he's told me about, now we met.
Okay.
Well, none of that matters for the web. The
Yeah.
change Rob's discussing about on the web was the multicast retry argument, and that's been 2 months ago.
Okay.
Okay.
So, so we're talking about separate repositories for K9Q Web for you and for the original at Franco's. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Scott has his own fork or repo
Okay. And
off
what are the
of.
difference? What are the differences now that haven't gone
Oh,
to
they're
many?
they're just I mean what yes many
Okay.
incredibly
All right.
valuable. You want and you get I mean you have a fairly recent one. I'll make sure that Terry
Okay.
has
What's repository? What's Scott's repository?
it's I don't know it's in the it's Scott's repo. Uh, I got let's see I'm um. Here it's a GitHub. Here's it's a no, that's the wrong one.
I just dropped it in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So I will track this one as well.
So if yeah on Terry that all of that is set up on Terry. So there's a K9Q web running on Terry, and you can look at your you can look at your 888 screens by going to you're using your browser now. So
Okay. 33 commits ahead, 1 commit behind F Venturi. Okay. I will try this.
well, you don't have his latest stuff on Terry. I just loaded it, Phil.
Okay. Well, I'm actually installing it on another machine here.
Okay, well, it's
Primary Unix.
okay. Well,
I mean, you can
you
have any
can,
number of these things, right? That's the whole idea of a network.
yeah, you can, you won't, you just,
Oh, let's see. It changes to probably more than the binary.
I don't know. I
I mean, I
compile
did a
his
make, and
code.
all I got was a new version of the K9Q web binary. I'm sure there's a lot more to it. And
Where are you doing this?
I pulled down I cloned his Git repository, and I'm building it.
Yeah, okay. This isn't on Terry. This is someplace else.
No.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't know. I've scripted the whole thing. It's
Oh, wait a minute. No, I see. It did. Okay. It copied it into user localhost bin and all the HTML stuff. Okay. So it overwrote Franco's version. Good. Okay. Now I should be able to try it. Okay, running, I think. W6 LVP loop at KE9Q. Very good. Now I can see where it's coming from. Looks nice. So, okay, this raises that question of how I should integrate power levels and other measurements. Should I go to simple exponential smoothing and get rid of this variable window integration stuff that I had before? It's probably time to do that.
I, who are you asking that question of?
You or Scott. I mean, I don't want to mess up anything.
I think you should. I think you should. The person who I would encourage you to contact with your questions is Glenn. I
Okay.
mean, Glenn
Okay.
is the product manager here on this thing.
Oh, okay.
And
Right. All right.
he's
I concur absolutely. As a spectrum analyzer expert, he's the one to discuss that with.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
only thing that I'm hesitant to even mention this because I don't understand it, but I'll say it anyway. We may want to consider modes where you have what you've got now, where you've got the minimum energy in the bin or the maximum energy in the bins. I noticed on the scope at work has a spectrum analyzer, and there's like a min, a max, a average, and something else
Oh,
in the
okay.
detection method. So
Well, I'm
I
talking
know
about the
that'd be a
raw
way to
energy
work.
measurements. I mean, I'm talking about the raw energy measurements. It's up to the application to do things like min max hold, right?
Well, yes, but aren't you integrating over a period of time and
Well,
at the
okay.
default
Right now, I'm
1620 bins
integrating
you've
over
got?
an arbitrary rectangular window, which originally my original thinking was that that would be an arbitrary amount of time. It would just keep integrating indefinitely until somebody read it, and then reading it would reset it. And the problem with that is it kind of fell apart when I added the per channel status stuff. Because every time an automatic status packet gets emitted, it gets reset. So you can't really control the integration time anyway. And when you have multiple clients contending for it, they're also resetting each other. So I'm thinking maybe I just need to make it memoryless and just start doing something like an exponential smoother on each of the bins over
When
some
I
period of time. Hmm?
when I disabled that averaging, I noticed that I didn't get the bouncing on the blocks since last poll.
When you say averaging, what do you mean?
The integration, sorry. I took
Um,
out the blocks since last poll.
okay,
Scaling
good.
factor.
You took out the integrate and dump basically, which is what I'm proposing to do.
And I just took, the raw summation of those bins, I guess 1620 out of 1.62 million for me. So there's 1,000 bins
Yeah.
to each output bin. But what I'm also suggesting is that if you have an intermittent signal that comes and goes between poles, you might want to do a max hold on that.
Oh,
So if
I
the
see what
bin
you're saying.
suddenly peaks, then you catch that peak. That's
Right.
probably not appropriate for a standard default mode, but I think that's kind of what a spectrum analyzer does. Again, I'm
Yeah.
way out of my depth here. So,
It's okay. It's okay.
Glenn's the guy.
Well, the math is the same for everybody. The thing is, all the stuff runs at a 50 hertz rate. I mean, that's how often the new FFT data is coming in. And I have to decide what to do every 50 hertz, which I call a frame. And I previously had been doing the integrate and dump, as you know, where I just keep each time it happens, I just keep adding it to the bin until somebody reads it and resets it. There are other things I can do. You don't want to miss brief data that has a lot of energy, which is why I wanted to average over time. I mean, how often is this actually being sampled by the application? The application in this case being in the KNIQ radio waterfall. How often is it
The
polling?
web, by default, the web polls at 10 hertz.
10 hertz. Okay, so there's five. In other words, there's five updates of the spectrum for every poll.
And that's visible on your K9Q webpage if you look down there. Do you see it?
FFT average 0. Where does it say that? I'm looking. I'm looking at the text in the bottom.
Right.
Okay, so I see FSN bin width bins SSRC
Blocks.
FFP. Hmm?
Blocks.
Blocks. Oh, there we
Yeah.
go. I see. It's running about 5.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's just the number of blocks that are included in your reading. Okay. And the problem is that will vary depending on who else is also reading the status from that channel. That's the problem with this approach. Um, yeah, I'm not adverse to restructuring all this and putting it out on separate streams or something. I mean, any way it would work here, I'm going to do. I wasn't sure this was the right way to do it in the first place. I could just make it a stream. It just starts and is there whether you read it or not, instead of having it be polled. I don't know if that would make it easier or harder for you.
I don't know either.
You got a lot of hash. You're around 18 megahertz there.
Oh, I have a lot of hash everywhere. Around 16, certainly. Oh, now I'm seeing flickering. You're looking at mine too?
I am looking, yeah. I don't know why it would affect you. I'm on a different machine.
Oh, I'm
I'm
looking
on
at
Terry.
Brian, my machine called Brian, and I'm now seeing flickering because
Interesting. Well, I'm on Terry and I'm seeing flicker too. Maybe
so,
hold on a second. Let me
oh, you're
zoom out.
probably overrunning. You're probably oh, this is a problem I'm wanting to tell you guys about. You're leaving hanging threads on KNIQ radio. When these sessions go away, sometimes the channels are still there and they consume CPU time. I mean, the spectral display actually consumes a fair amount of CPU time, especially when you're zoomed out like this.
I haven't really, we're in alpha testing on the integration of
And I'm just
KNIQ
telling you,
Web. Yeah.
there's this thing. Okay, I'm running now on the machine I call Shack, which is the one that actually has the KNIQ radio running. It's a NUC.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of idle time, 83.8% idle. It's got one spec thread running is taking about a quarter of a core. That's the one that's summing up all those bins that I told you was so CPU intensive.
Well, that's me, I think. I'm looking
Well,
at
I'm
a,
probably me too, because I'm running it.
yeah.
You know what might be happening? Because we're running two different copies of KNIQ Web running on different machines. They're probably using the same SSRCs and conflicting with each other because I only see one.
Ah,
That's okay. See, we run into these things as we test like this. Things are always running on the same system.
The SSRC is visible both on the status page and in that text down below the graph.
Yeah. Well, I'm also I'm just running top on the machine that actually has KNAQ radio on it, and I see only one spec thread, 1001. I think it probably was created by both copies. There's no locking on an SSRC. I
I
need to
run
put in a
multiple.
feature. Hmm? I need to put in a feature where you can have a SSRC allocated instead of you having to pick one. I
When
just
I
need to
run
stay
multiple
allocated.
copies of KA9Q Web on the same device, I get assigned multiple SSRCs. Usually
Oh,
it's
on the same
1000,
device.
1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, and
Yeah,
1005.
if you're running, but KNIQ Web is running on the same machine, correct?
No, my K9Q radio box is headless. So I've
Right,
got a separate machine that's running the web.
right. That's fine. But how many copies of KNIQ Web do you have running?
I generally have the original Franco, mine, and an experimental copy.
Are you
And
running
I
both at
generally
the
have
same time?
three at the same time, and obviously not all have a browser tab
Do
attached.
they share any state?
That's a real good question.
Because right
Can't
now I'm
answer.
running, the copy I'm looking at is running on my machine called Brian, which is an i7. The copy that Rob is looking at is running on Terry, which is a Celeron. They're completely independent machines, both running KNIQ Web, talking to the same KNIQ radio server. And I
And
think
what are
they've
your
just had a
SSRCs?
conflict on, hmm? I think
What
they've
are
just
your
divided.
SSRCs?
I think they collided trying to use the same SSRC. This is really my fault because I don't have a way right now to say create a radio channel and assign an SSRC instead of requiring one as an argument, which requires that you pick one.
Well, what does your screen show and what does Rob's screen show? Is that really what's happening? That's all I'm asking.
Well, I'm telling you, my screen's showing. I'm running top on the machine has CanIQ radio, and I see only one spec thread for SSRC 1001, and it's taking about 25% of a thread of the core.
And Rob,
And
what
even
does
when
your
Rob was running
KA98?
his,
I'm on SSRC 1000. That's what I have. So
well,
if I go in,
they come in pairs. One's for the demodulated channel, one's for the spectrum analyzer.
okay, well, I'm just
But
looking
I
at
am
what
running
computer.
it. I am running it on. I am running a copy on a different machine, completely independent copy of CanIQ Web, which is Scott's code. And here we go. I see the flickering again. I think what's happening,
It's me.
we
I
are
zoomed in.
conflicting. We are both trying to
I
use the same
we're trying
channel,
to.
Got
You
it.
and I
Yes,
are
I
trying
see.
to. You and I are trying to use the same channel.
right?
Uh,
Because there's no protection here. The code is
and
written
so,
hardwired to start using SSRC 1000, 1001, and so forth. What it probably
yeah,
should do is just pick one pseudo-randomly. And SSRC is a 32-bit unsigned number, so just pick one randomly.
Okay, that shouldn't be difficult.
Pick one randomly, chances are you're not going to collide. Because if you know the birthday paradox in cryptography, you run the chances of collision don't rise to about 50% until you have about as many as a square root of the size of the space entity. So, for example, if you have a 32-bit space, you're going to have about 64K entities before there's about a 50% chance you're going to collide with one that already exists. The space is so large here, basically, as long as you pick a random number, you're not going to probably not going to collide with one that already exists. But I
is
should
there?
solve the problem a better way than that, which is by assigning one to you.
If there is a collision, would the browser be informed?
No, it doesn't know. I mean, if you send a command to a channel that already exists, this is going to take it as a command to that channel. It's not going to create a new one. So you got two copies of KNIQ Web, both fighting
Yeah,
over this channel on KNIQ radio because they don't know about the other.
yeah.
That's what I'm
Well,
trying to tell
yeah, I know. But so you're proposing some mechanism
But
that
what I'm
would.
proposing right now as a stopgap is that the web,
Oh,
KNIQ Web,
okay.
don't generate, just start at 1000 and 1001 like it is now. Pick a pseudo-randomly pick a number in
Yeah,
the 32-bit space and just use that.
sounds like a good.
Yeah. As long as it's spread out over 32 bits, the
So
chances
that, but that's something for Scott to implement.
yes. Yes. The client should do that.
Okay.
I
So
just have to find a way to, in the semantics of the command language, to find a clean way to say, create me a new channel and tell me what the SSRC is instead of, a command that says create a channel with this number. And if it's already existing,
yeah.
the existing channel.
Well, I may have to go through. It sounds like you're seeing some zombie sessions, so I need to figure out.
Yeah. And I'm also, I have been seeing zombie sessions. I'm not sure how
Yeah,
you
yeah.
close them. I suspect that if the server just crashes, it probably doesn't do anything to stop the channel.
I,
I don't see it all the time, so it's probably
yeah.
doing something to
Okay.
try to clean up.
Yeah. But of course I've seen, well, I've ended up with multiple copies in my debugging today.
Yeah. That's
I
something I
know
got to
that
think about. I don't
yeah.
have any simple way to have a timeout.
Well,
I mean, my channels are running indefinitely until they're told to stop.
of course, since they're multicasting, they have no way of knowing if there's anybody consuming it. So
That's the problem. Yeah, I know. I know.
it's well, um,
I might want to work. I've been thinking about working on that, but it requires that listeners periodically transmit something. They already transmit something called an Internet Group Management message, which in theory is exactly what I would want to know. However, the way snooping works, those messages get swallowed by switches, so I can't always tell. I mean, I will see my
And,
own.
and yeah,
Well,
and the
let me finish.
client, excuse me. I'm sorry.
Let me finish. The sender on a group also subscribes to his own multicast to work around various problems and switches that are rather detailed. So it will see that itself is on the group. So it thinks, okay, there's somebody listening. It doesn't know how many others are listening because of the way IGMP snooping works. So yes, what I'm saying is that there's no way for me right now to tell if anybody's even listening to a group.
Which of the streams is the bigger problem?
What's that?
Which of the streams is the bigger problem? If this thing crashes and leaves it hanging, is it the
Yeah.
Spectrum DMOD thread
It's
or
the
the
Spectrum
AM?
DMOD thread that is
Okay,
right
but
now.
that
See,
one's not.
thread is taking
That
like
one's
right now. The one
that
I
one's,
see running is taking a quarter of a core.
but it's polled, correct?
No, well, it will be polled, but it's still going to use up that time whether or not it is polled. But it's still having to average every 50 seconds, 20 milliseconds is having to go through all the bins and add up all the powers, whether or not it's being read.
So one thing I wonder is, are these the same bins what 40 hertz wide that you're using?
Yes.
Can you create a set of lower resolution bins that are high enough for
I was just thinking about it. I sent out some mail. I don't know if you saw it. I was pondering that exact problem issue. I could probably compute them in parallel with the big ones since they're already in the cache, and the CPU is not the problem. It's the cache hit ratio here is the problem. So yes, I've been thinking about doing that.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess Scott, what's the lowest resolution bin you think a user would be happy to see? 100 hertz? Kilohertz would be 2 cores, obviously.
Well, no, it'd be more than that because how wide is the screen and how many pixels would that be in 30 megahertz?
Right. But I'm just trying to think of a number of ways that you could do data reduction or decimate or whatever you hell you want to call it once for display purposes, and then have a
Right.
your load for every other instance where somebody needs to visualize the spectrum. Like
Right.
if you got it down, if you got it down to like 400 hertz per bin, then of course you have a tenth as much data, and you could share that, and you don't have to do that once. But
Well, to do that, I mean, I'm doing almost as much work as the forward FFT, right? I'm running almost as many. I'm running. Well, first of all, whatever additional FFT I run is going to have to consume just as many input points per second, right?
Right.
Right. So the difference, you remember that the FFT algorithmic complexity is order n log n, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay. So if you scale for the number of points, it scales as log n, right? So smaller FFTs will consume less time total than bigger FFTs at the same data rate.
Right.
Right. But if I run a bunch of FFTs that are different block sizes, but all fairly large, it's just going to gobble up more time. However, that may not actually be the problem. The problem is really not CPU cycles so much as it is memory and cache, because
Okay.
this is a very memory intensive algorithm. The CPUs have blown past memory speeds a long time ago. That's why we have caches. The problem is the caches are not really all that big compared to problems we're working on. So if I could do a bunch of a fast series of small FFTs in parallel with the big FFTs at the same time I'm accessing his data, I could probably do them for almost nothing, as long as they're small. As long as if I start doing a bunch of big FFTs that are, only a good size fraction of the big FFT I'm doing now, then that may start to gobble up more CPU than I want to spend on this, especially if nobody's there to even look at the data. Um,
I
but
mean, you're thinking of ways as if all you wanted to do was have like n number of arbitrary visualizations of the spectrum, the FFT bins. I mean, you're just thinking of the way you would do that if that was your goal, right?
yeah, or at least I'm thinking about at least optimizing the lower resolution views, which right now are the most compute intensive.
Okay, okay, that makes
Right.
sense.
When you zoom in, okay, at some point when you zoom in, the right thing to do will be to create a regular receiver channel and do an FFT on that.
Right. I
Right.
also was thinking while I was building the circuit here, I was thinking at what point would it be easier just to create say a few hundred kilohertz wide channel, then then you know then do the bins on that, and then also the audio on that,
Well,
or
that's what I just meant.
oh,
What I
okay.
meant.
So you do
Yeah.
talk not only do the audio, but the visual, but the display bins as well at some point.
Well, no, not on the same channel. I could have a special channel that would simply create a wide, let's say 100 kilohertz wide receiver with an IQ output, and whose output would then run into a bunch of FFTs running on that, just on that little segment. And
Okay.
then I can make those FFTs as precise as I want. I mean, you can have blocks longer than 20 milliseconds if you want more accuracy than you can get right now from the existing FFT.
Oh, well, of course, yeah, that makes sense.
And we would like that increased
Yeah.
accuracy.
I mean,
Although, as somebody else pointed out, I mean, you could also just start piping this data into GNU Radio if you want, more precision than I can give you. I mean, you really originally, Rob, you wanted this just so you could see at a broad glance what the whole spectrum looked like, right?
We're there. I mean, this is
Yeah, and and what we're yeah, so I'm trying to do two things. One is I'm trying to tune the performance of this so I can give you what you want with fewer CPU cycles. And the other is the possibility of turning this into a more general purpose spectrum analyzer, which we may or may not need to do, given that we have other ways of doing it.
yeah. Well, I think there's again, Glenn is the person who's really to
Yeah,
talk to about this. Then I
yeah,
don't really know what to do.
yeah.
But
Glenn
he
has
is
practical experience, a valuable practical experience with spectrum analyzers. I've used them. I certainly know the theory, but I don't have the practical knowledge he
yeah,
has.
yeah. Well, he was more enthusiastic about Scott's work and the capabilities that he can get
Mhm.
uh, than I've heard Glenn enthuse about anything in a very long time. I think that one of the things that he mentioned that's really valuable is this refresh rate, the
Mhm.
ability. Glenn said that this is now more valuable for TM in his antenna work than the Kiwi, and the Kiwi was his, and some of it has to do with a digital spectrum analyzer versus the swept spectrum. You see things with this digital approach, especially at this high refresh rate. You see things that you just
Yeah.
he was seeing noise phenomena that he'd never seen before.
Yeah,
And
I can believe that because with the Kiwi is very limited in cycles, and even the FPGA can only do so much.
yeah,
It's got this spectrum, this special purpose spectrum analyzer in it, but it's very
yeah,
limited
yeah,
in what it can
yeah.
collect. Here, I'm running in a general purpose CPU. I can collect anything you want if you're willing to spend the cycles on it.
Well, we've got your except for the Pi 5, you've got plenty of cycles. I mean,
Yeah,
Uli is running it on a old something that's not much more powerful than Terry. He's running a 888.
yeah. Well,
It's
remember, I got cycles. We have cycles, but we don't necessarily have memory bandwidth.
yes,
Right. I mean, I think
yeah,
Clint mentioned it earlier, right? The Pi 5s run out of memory bandwidth. I think we're probably closer to the memory limits here than we would like to think we are. We got plenty of cycles. So what this means is if I'm going to do more work, I got to structure this carefully so that I do more things on each um, piece of data at the same time.
yeah, yeah,
So I don't keep going out to memory to get it, or especially if I
yeah,
have to miss the cache to go out and get it. So that's why I'm thinking about structuring parallel FFTs that execute at the same time,
yeah, yeah.
I
same
just
memory.
I just question, do we have a problem? This
Well,
all sounds great, but you're talking about a lot of work, and I don't know that Glenn cares.
I have a problem here, which is that, you guys are leaving hanging sessions, and these sessions take a lot of CPU time. I mean, normally I think
Oh,
of a
okay.
thread as using almost nothing, but
Okay.
that's not true for these spectrum analyzer
Okay.
threads when they're running
Okay.
full
Well,
resolution.
I have I do have a watchdog daemon that goes through and looks for zombies, programs and threads, and I haven't really hooked I haven't put the spectrum analyzer, I mean the K9Q web, fully into that watchdog. But my watchdog's goal,
Problem
one
is,
of its goals
I
is
don't
to
know how you actually detect a zombie because right now, I mean, how do you
if
know
is
somebody
this
else is looking at it?
I would I wouldn't know, I wouldn't be able to tell you that at that level. But if you just have an orphan thread sitting there chewing up CPU, I mean, I guess I was thinking you were talking about it was
Well,
disconnected
it's an
from a
orphan
parent.
channel. It's an orphan channel,
But
and
if it's
it's
a working channel, but it just has nobody that's consuming it, well, I
really
don't,
listening. I mean, that's a problem
I,
I have to solve because it's kind of inherent in the way I've structured the way channels work. So I have to
I
solve that.
think you may need a control channel, an
I
optional
do
back
have a control channel.
from the browser back to the
Well, sure.
to the web server. Does
What do you mean?
well, I'm just thinking. Okay, so it's
Well, the web server certainly has channels over to KNIQ radio.
I know, but I'm talking about its connections to.
And as long as it doesn't die, it can manage channels, right? It can make sure that they're shut
Yeah, I
down
know,
when
but,
the user
yeah,
goes
but
away.
yeah, but if all it's doing is emitting multicast packets, there's no way for it to know whether there's a browser out there. So
Yeah, right.
Oh,
so
now, are we sure? I am not sure. I have not looked at that. It uses WebSockets between the web server and the browser. So, as far as I know, that's a TCP connection. It should be able
Right.
to detect if the web browser goes away.
Yes.
Apparently, it's not. So, I haven't looked
No,
at it
no. Well,
yet,
no, no,
and
no.
there's
I
going to
think
be a
it
bug. I
probably
know
is. I think it probably is, Scott. I think the problem here is probably only happens when the web server dies
that
while there are
should
active
be
channels.
rare after I found the segfault bug this
Well,
weekend.
it is relatively rare, but still it's something, it ought to be handled
well,
because it leave a lot
I
of
do a
dead.
lot of I do, yeah I mean in developing work I do a lot of stopping and starting Whisper Daemon and K9Q Web
Okay,
with
but
Radio Daemon running and without it running, and I can shut down I will sometimes shut down the Radio D while I'm in a browser session. So
Yeah,
if the web server dies, the Spectrum D mod will not be pulled.
that's
yeah.
right.
So, uh, and I'm not suggesting you do any work here, but maybe a timeout if you go 10
I can
seconds with
certainly do
no
that. I can certainly do
it.
that. The only timeout I have right now is the one that gets rid of a session when you want to close it. The way you get rid of a channel right now is you set its frequency to 0 and then stop polling it, and it'll go away 20 seconds later. So logically, all the unused channels are tuned to 0 frequency when you think about it. And so when you start up a channel, unless you send it the frequency, it'll be at 0. And it'll actually create state and start running. It just won't do anything useful until you send it the frequency. But if you set it to any other frequency and go away, it'll run forever. But if you set it to 0 hertz and then go away and stop polling its status channel, it'll go away after 20 seconds.
I will definitely look into this. It's not something I really understand on the current code, so I
Okay.
can't speak intelligently
Well,
to
I
it.
don't know.
But I think
How
I
do you get
understand the
rid of,
problem.
yeah. How do you get rid of channels now? When a user goes away or closes the session, how do you get rid of a key and IQ channel?
I cannot speak intelligently to how the code currently works in that situation.
Okay. Well, what it should do is tune it to 0 hertz and then stop polling it. Then it will go away.
Right.
I mean, I could have had an explicit command, but I like to try to make these APIs, these protocols, as elegant and as general as possible. Sometimes
No,
to
no,
reflect.
no. It's fine. I understand the issue and
Yeah.
I understand how to shut it down. I just don't know what the program's currently doing.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it's quite possible there is a really silly bug that, we just haven't noticed yet. So
Yeah.
it won't be the
I
first or
haven't
the
seen this
last.
happen a lot, so I think it only happens when the web server is restarted or crashes and loses track of what channels it's created.
Okay, that is helpful. I understand. Yes.
I think that's what I see because it hasn't been a serious problem. It's
And
just when I want to nip in the
that
bud before.
certainly fits with the whole you have a channel, a Spectrum D mod, it's tuned, it's no longer being polled, it's still taking up resources.
That's
That
right.
all tracks. So yeah,
Right.
I could see that happening.
They get resources because it's still doing that addition. It's every 20 milliseconds, I'm running through all the bins, summing the squares into the larger bins, and then going to sleep until for another 20 milliseconds.
Yeah, I saw that. I kept looking for a square root, but that wasn't my calibration
No,
error.
it's just some of the squares. You want energies, not volt amplitudes. So besides, square roots are expensive. Squaring is easy. Square roots are expensive. So that should be in spectrum.c, I think.
Which source code file should I be referring to for the coding standard? I feel kind of silly on some of these pull requests when I'm not sure if it's spaces or tabs. I'm trying to match what's there, but sometimes I don't know.
I'm using what used to be called the Indian Hill coding standards, which really dates me because I worked at Bell Labs Indian Hill around 1980 when they were established, having to do with where curly braces go and spaces and so forth. It's just a lot of it's personal preference, really. And I think the usual rule when you're contributing patches is to just match whatever's already there.
And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. And I'm asking you which of your K9Q radio files would be the best reference to try and match, because
Well,
sometimes
all
I
of
see
them.
spaces where I don't expect them, and sometimes I see tabs instead of spaces. And,
Oh, well, I'm using Emacs as my editor.
as am
And
I.
sometimes I can't see that,
At X, Y,
I'm not even
space.
sure. I'm not even sure that it puts in tabs when I hit tab. It might even turn it into spaces. I don't know.
I'm telling you, there are tabs in some of the files, and
Oh, I
some of
can
them are
believe
not.
it. Yeah. And there are also trailing spaces on some lines. I try to delete them when I see them. Trailing white space is kind of pointless. It also, when you do a diff, it tends to stand out.
That's kind of why I'm
You do a
asking.
git
Yes.
diff, yeah, it highlights it in red, probably because somebody found it really annoying and wanted to make it obvious. Um, I mean, don't worry too much about spaces versus tabs as long as it looks right. The readability of the code that matters. But all the Spectrum stuff is in spectrum.c if you haven't already found it.
Well, since we're off in the weeds, the other question I would waste your time with is, can we use the test points as inputs instead of outputs?
It's inputs. Oh, I never conceived them that way. I don't think the control command will, no, not right now. I mean,
No,
it
I
add the
understand
code
that.
to set them, but
So if I
I
were
would
to
rather,
modify a tune to allow setting a test point, you would accept the pull request.
oh, yeah, I would create additional parameters for that. So keep them separate from the output test points.
Ah, okay.
But that will
Understood.
require a fair amount of support. I'll have to go through, you probably already seen the places where I parse commands, convert between the network status packet and the internal structure, and also
But
the tune
yeah, let's
command and
drop
the
it then.
control command.
Skip it. Skip it. Drop it. I don't want to make any
Well, no,
work
I
for
mean,
you.
this could be useful. I mean, if you need to like set something for testing, you need to send some input to a channel to make it do something in a test mode, that could actually be useful. Usually it'd be a flag or something rather than a number, but
Normally what I do is create a file in temp and then look for that file, and that's my switch.
you can do that too. Um, if you
But I
start doing
saw
it,
the test points and said, "Hey, I wonder if these could work the other direction." And I thought I'd ask.
no,
Like I said,
no,
I
right
don't
now,
mean to
well,
make
no,
any
they're just,
work. So
no, they're output only. And I try not to use them very long because they'll just confuse people. I'll use them, then I'll turn them off.
right, this is more for test and debug.
Right. I understand. I mean, there is a command line verbose option, and you could always add command line options, but I try to avoid those when I'm running a daemon. I mean, it's difficult. It's painful to edit the
Well, like on the
service
integration
file.
stuff where I was trying to figure out if that was the bounce, I wanted to do it live while it was running.
Yes,
I didn't want to
yes. You don't want
restart.
to have to
So,
restart it. Exactly, exactly.
and that's where the temp came in handy. And I
Yeah.
said, I need to ask
Um,
about the test points.
Wait a minute. Do I have some flags? I thought I added something like this a while ago. I had some flags. I can't remember if I added some binary flags to control things. Um, Status.h is where I list all of the field entries. Um, yeah,
Oh,
setups and
yes.
clear ops. Here we go. That was it. Yeah, but then a long time ago. If you look at the num status type in status.h, where I define all of the command and status type values, near the top you'll see entries set ops and clear ops. And those were binary flags. I believe those were binary flags. You already have a mechanism to do that.
Noted. Thank you.
See that? And it
Yes,
may
I have to
already
follow
be
up.
control, but not tune. Um, so yeah, I think that's it. I put that in once a long time ago. Yeah, you can see there's separate options. One for set ops will OR in and set whatever bits you want, and clear ops will and in the complement and clear whatever bits you want
Ah, and it's per channel too, isn't it?
per channel. Yeah,
Wish I'd have looked there.
that was to enable and disable various debugging routines at runtime. I don't think I'm using those options for anything right now. Uh, oh, I'm using it and the FM demodulator. What am I using it for? Probably to control that threshold extension stuff I was experimenting with. Let's see.
There's a hidden control.
Oh, yeah. I was testing a low pass filter that I never actually finished. Yeah, I wanted to insert a low pass filter ahead of the tone detector, the tone squelch, because it was getting false by DMR signals. And I eventually solved that problem just by making the tone detectors more narrow. So I didn't complete the filter, but I guess that stuff is still in there. So yeah, if you look at fm.c, you'll see an example of its use. Just test a flag, in your code and do something if the option's set. It was my first experience in trying to have JAT-TPT write code. I tried to have it write a Chebyshev low pass filter for me, and the code just came out. Arrays were being indexed out of bounds and stuff like that. And I just gave up. I said, look, I mean, if I'm going to do all the work to check it, it's just going to be just as much work to write it myself.
Yeah, but I must admit, I am tempted to throw the HTML at it and see if it can improve it, because let's face it, that web is ugly.
Yeah.
And that is a common enough case that maybe it can actually do something appropriate.
So what
I
kind
wouldn't
of
trust it for DSP, but for HTML, certainly it's run across enough hipster web designer web pages and indexed them as part of its learning.
Oh, it can understand HTML and find problems?
Well, I'd just like it to look better, like where all that
Oh,
RX888 data is on the web page.
I see. Yeah.
something that doesn't hurt your eyes.
Yeah, I'm sure these things have been trained on enough HTML, so yeah, it ought to know it by now.
It's like if you ask the AIs to write a Windows program, they've probably seen enough to do a decent job of that.
Hmm. It still gets a lot of things wrong. It always gives you such a confidently wrong answer until you correct it and it says, "Oh yes, you're right," and then it gives you another answer which is only slightly less wrong.
Okay, just checking both of yours latest commits on a machine. Let me just
Yeah,
look to verify that they're compatible, and then I'm going to
could
check
be.
that in as the latest.
Please let me know if they're not.
Yeah, I don't see any problem. I mean, it's
They
looking
built.
good.
Okay. Sometimes I see compiler warnings on other machines that I didn't see on my own machines. I must not be
Yeah, I
using
did.
the same
I
warning
did.
flags everywhere.
I didn't. Well, downloaded, compiled your code on
Oh,
Ubuntu 24 just now, and I got no warnings. It was
yeah, I
clean.
try to avoid compiler warnings. I think they look inelegant. I mean, I'll pull down packages and build them, and they seem to work, but I get zillions and zillions of compiler warnings. I never know whether any of them are important.
Yes, I
You
I
know
try
the
to make
difference. Yes,
make it clean. I and clearly identify when something's in error. You never
right.
expect it to happen if you probably haven't looked through my code much, but it's filled with. I mean, there are as many error condition tests followed by diagnostic log messages lines. There's more of those than there are of things that actually do work.
You have an assert routine or something. I use asserts a lot, although I usually come.
No, I don't use this certain that it's a little analogous. I mean, you can always bail out on a bash program. You just exit,
Right.
I try to do that only in under conditions when there's no chance that this machine is going to run.
Yeah.
If there's a one channel that's off, well then that's okay. But if so I try to warn people when they execute the command, when they run Whisper Daemon, anytime they run any Whisper Daemon command, I do a whole bunch of validation stuff to verify that the
Yeah.
environment's right and think things are running, that there's nothing pathological going on.
Yeah.
And
My
I also,
rule, yeah. My rule for using asserts is I don't like to invoke asserts on bad data. I'll call asserts only if there's some internal problem.
uh-huh.
Something that can't be
Yeah,
true. I mean, if
yeah.
it's just bad data, I should always, detect
You
that
sure? Yeah,
bad
yeah,
data. But if there's something inside it just doesn't make sense or, it couldn't happen, then I will trigger an assert because that's a problem
yeah.
I have to
I don't,
fix.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, because the structure of whisper daemon means that a failure in one area like if K9UQ Scott's web stuff where that if that were to crash it wouldn't take down any other services. Yes, it should. I mean, it's
Right,
independent.
sure. It's
you know you
independent,
know
right?
and similarly with the uploader, the PSK uploader and your decoding
Right.
routines, they're separate services, and
It should
if
be.
that
Yeah.
yeah, they're failures. So there's but in Whisper Daemon I can't there's the complexity of configuration options and operational states doesn't allow that kind of. I mean, to the extent that it's possible. Well, I spawn off.
Well, you could start thinking about trying to factor things. Like, for
Well,
example, the actual decoding could be done by a separate set of threads and you could communicate through files, right?
yeah, yeah.
Right? It's like I'm
Well,
saying,
that's how it works. I mean, there's right now Whisper Demons, each band, and each band pulls for for a set of WAV files, decodable set of WAV files,
right?
one or more sets of for different modes. So it basically is polling. And when those appear, then it validates actually goes through and runs socks and makes sure that everything is okay. We actually
Right.
got that valid. Well, there were times when I wasn't getting it because of bugs in my code. So so that's on a completely independent thread, and then after that, the data gets queued to still another thread, and then that gets queued up to another thread there through shared file systems.
Yeah.
So failures in one part, you
So
end up
the
with
important thing is that failure in any one part doesn't bring everything down.
doesn't
It
bring that
pile
doesn't
up, but you can
well, to the extent that there are certain choke points. I mean, radio
sure,
D being one. Okay,
sure,
there's only one radio D instance, and
right.
and there's the uploaders, the PSK reporters. There's nothing. I guess the system just goes and uh, but it just sits there and retries. But in the case of Whisper Demon, if you lose connections, it deals with transient and long-term loss of connections to the various data servers that it's
You
uploading
should.
to.
One of the
So
things I like about multicast, right? Because the flip side of not being able to tell if anybody's listening is you don't care.
yeah, well,
Somebody, one of your users dies, it doesn't matter. You just keep
yeah,
running, and he
yeah.
can restart independently. And when he
Well, here,
restarts,
yeah,
it doesn't require you to restart.
yeah. Well, that's what we try to do, and
Right.
it's pretty darn reliable as long as there's
Good.
power. Uh, I uh, and yeah, I'm going to check in this change so that all the Whisper Demon sites. I haven't been, people have been pulling the code. Amazing number of people are sending me questions about it. So
Mhm.
so I have to respond. So and maintain the legacy pool of people. So
Okay.
as I work on PCM record integration. So no, I think what you have well, it'll be interesting to see how much more performant PCM record is. I think it's significant. So
Okay.
other than that, there's nothing. There's always my
Oh,
wish list from you, but I don't think I'm.
by the way, I did tell you that there's a Linux call that allows you to avoid polling for files. You can just be notified when they
No, I know there's an IO
I notified.
notify.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to be sure. I was, in fact, that's one of the reasons it's taking me so long is I'm getting rid of that. I'm doing things like looking at LSOF to see if the file's open. So
Yeah.
if there's, I can determine that, and I can time out on, files that are open for too
Oh,
long.
LSOF is really slow. I need to find a better way to
Yeah,
find
there's,
out is this file being written or opened by anybody? There
I don't
has
know,
to
is there a stat command that
there
does it?
must be a way to do that. Um,
I've just been poking around with that as part of my
because I mean, the
new
kernel
coding, but
knows. The kernel certainly knows. The kernel
the
knows how.
Carlos, that was the quickest way for a user to
Yeah, I
know
mean, the
what the
kernel
kernel
knows
knows.
how many processes have a file open because when you unlink it, it won't go away until the last one closes. It has
Yeah,
to have information.
yeah, yeah. No, it just I don't know how to get. I mean, I found LSOF, so I just threw it in.
Yeah, I use that a lot too, but I'm never happy with it because it's
Uh,
slow and painful.
yeah, this isn't too bad. It's not executed very often, but I'm always for efficiency whenever I can get it. So it's
Well, the usual time I use LSOF is when I'm trying to unmount a file system and some process somewhere is using it, holding it open and keeping me from mounting it. And I have to figure out who it is.
yeah.
That's what I use it for most often.
Hmm. Well,
It's just a process that has its current directory on that file system.
yeah. Well,
Most
to be honest, I didn't even know about it until I was informed of it by ChatGPT. I mean, that's how I
Yeah.
use it. Is that I don't
Yeah, it
expect
can be good for
perform-
that. It can be good for
That's
telling you about things. Yeah.
that's really what I use it for.
Yeah,
Is
it is
questions
good for that.
and so it told me about LSOF. He asked that was one of my questions. Is how do I know when the file is closed? So it's
When nobody has it open anymore. Yeah.
nobody has it open. Yeah, because PCM record will keep open the file and keep writing to it, and only when it's ready to go on to the next file will it close the file, at which point it'll never go
Sure.
back to it, right?
Sure.
That's my so
Sure.
I'm the anyway, that's my I don't see it here. It's
I'm probably going to add, as I told you, I'm going to probably add some locking to that so that any consumer can wait until the file has been completely written, and then only one consumer will get access to that file.
Yeah, how
Do that
what would the
without locking.
what would yeah, well I was gonna just I think there's an IO notify.
That may be one way to do it. But basically, it's a traditional file locking problem. All
Yeah,
the files being written, you don't want anybody reading it. And then,
yeah,
well, we want one process to get control of it.
yeah. Well, that's I use the file creation as the semaphore for deciding whether I need to spawn off a PCM record, because there's 15 channels listening to that one stream, 15 different bands.
Yeah.
So I only want to have one instance of PCM record, right? And writing out files for all those bands. And
Um,
so
yeah.
who makes the decision to
Oh,
fire
I,
up
I, I would,
and,
I'd vote PCM
and
record out of system D. It's a service file.
well, the location of them, and as people add and subtract channels, it doesn't. I can't do that for
Oh, it,
Kiwi.
it, it comes out of a config file. I do that already. That's exactly
Y-
how I do
Yeah,
PCM record.
I know that's how you do it. It
Well,
doesn't.
actually, PCM record right now will record everything on a logical multicast channel, and it'll create a file, for each one. So right
Yeah,
now, I
yeah,
have all my Whisper streams going to one multicast address. I have one
yeah.
copy PCM record that listens to it, and then it creates
That
a file for
that's
everything it hears.
that's exactly how I'm using it. That's
Yeah.
marvelous mode. That works great.
So that only needs to be one copy PCM record. It
Yeah,
is not multi-threaded because normally writes are very fast. It doesn't need to be
yeah.
multi.
That I can. That yeah. So,
Phil, I just looked at the web code and it looks to me when the browser disconnects, it does tune the DMOD channel to 0 and kills the Spectrum thread.
Good. Okay.
But,
That's what it should do.
but it does not tune the Spectrum DMOD to 0.
ah,
Oh, okay. That could be
Yeah.
the problem. Yeah.
Can I do that from the tune command?
You should. It's
Just
a it's a
tried a
it's a channel like any other. It just it's operating with a special demodulator. But the
tried
down
tune S1001 F for frequency 0
right.
hf.local, and I got an SSRC of 1001 segmentation fault.
Ooh. From
Ooh, I
what
think
seg
I'm
faulted? What seg
tune,
faulted?
tune,
Oh, Tune did. Okay, not Radio D. I wonder why I did that.
but I'm not sure I'm using the tune command correctly.
Well, if it's seg faults, that shouldn't be your fault. Whenever something seg faults, it's that's the programmer's fault. It's my fault. So, no matter what you throw at a command, it should never seg fault. It won't do anything useful, but it shouldn't seg fault. Yeah, seg faults inside Radio D are real pain. Fortunately, they don't seem to happen very often anymore.
Okay, so I just pulled radio, rebuilt, restarted web, opened a browser. I see an SSRC of 1000 at USB, which should be AM. So there's a bug I
Right.
need to look at. And 1001 tuned to 16.2. That's the spectrum.
That's right.
So I close the browser tab.
Close the browser. Yeah.
And now let's run control HF local. And I still see a 1000 and 1001.
It may be timing out. It takes 20 seconds after you tune them to zero for them to actually go away. And if you
Okay.
keep polling them, they're not going to go away, even if they're tuned to zero.
Will execute and control HF local by itself just to see the list of SSRCs? Will that poll them?
I don't think so.
No, 1000 just went away. 1001's still there.
Okay, all right. So,
Now we know where the bug is. Cool. Thank
and
you.
what's the frequency in 1001? Is it 16.2?
16.2. Yeah,
Okay, so it never got retuned to zero. Okay, there's the bug.
exactly. That's I just told you the code doesn't do it. It retunes the other one.
Yeah,
So easy fix. Okay.
should be.
I know what to do. Thank you. Very good.
That's great, guys.
Actually, come to think of it, I think I might actually restart the demodulator every time you change its center frequency because it was too hard to fix to do any other way, less drastic way. What did I do there?
Okay, this time tune didn't seg fault, but the preset is garbage.
Yeah, I can believe that. What do I do if um, hmm.
Well, the tune command, while it
Wait, no.
returned garbage, must have worked because 1001 no longer exists.
Good.
So
Okay.
that's
Well, it
good.
shouldn't return garbage, but
I dropped it in the chat.
yeah, good. All right. Yeah, there's common code to all the demodulators in radio.c called down convert, which does what the name implies. It's a digital down converter, and it does a lot of the overhead for each channel, waiting the 20 milliseconds and handling tune commands and stuff like that. It also sends the status messages.
I have not hacked on tune, and I did a git pull and rebuild and reinstall. So this should be
Okay.
git shows no diffs from your code. So I don't
Good.
think this is one of my stupid hacks. It's screwing up the tune command.
Yeah. And yeah, the tune zero timeout stuff, that's applicable to all the modulators because that's in down convert, which is shared by all of them.
And like you said, it was about 20 seconds after the tune command
About
before
20
it went
seconds,
away, but it
yes,
did go
yes.
away. So yeah,
Yeah.
great.
I couldn't think of a cleaner way to do it because I didn't really want to have keep alives from the clients. I mean, I might eventually have to do that, but right now a client does not have to send anything periodically in order to keep getting data, but I keep considering doing that.
Okay. Well, you guys seem to be being very productive without my intervention. So I think I may
Yeah. I'm about done here too.
bail out
I'm gonna go eat something.
and go and watch Billy Bob Thornton or something for a change. So,
Have fun. All right. See you.
okay. Anyway, good work. Uh, I don't think, I think there, as I recall, there's still some questions for Glenn about kind of where to go. I think you're about 90% of the way there for Glenn. I think that the one thing I can think of is zooming in. I mean, we're used to zooming in with the
Well,
Kiwi.
okay. There is another issue which is related to zooming in, which is remember, this is piggybacked on an FFT that's being done for another reason. When you
Yes.
do FFT for spectral analysis, you usually apply windows to the FFT
Yeah.
in the time
Yes.
domain.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
not doing that. They're rectangular and they're overlapped.
Yeah.
So you might want, this is another reason to do independent FFTs with windows that are designed for spectral analysis rather than convolution.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, again, Glenn is the person to ask about
yeah.
what
But
to do.
when zoomed in, okay, and I mean for finer resolution, the thing to do might just be to define a KNIQ radio channel and then just do your stuff on that.
Well,
And then you don't have to process all the input
it's
data.
the you here is not me. It's Scott. So
Yeah.
it's so
Okay.
so
All right.
it's how I just don't want to in any way discourage you from what the tremendous progress. It's really, yeah, a very useful tool. That's so
Yeah.
so the um the yeah the I mean, the Kiwi is a model for us here. There's having the and the Kiwi, we can zoom in and we can go down to two
Yeah.
hertz 2 hertz bandwidth. I don't know that we need that for this that kind of capabilities. I don't,
No.
if you throw
I
too
mean,
much stuff
sometimes
into
I
the
look at very fine structure. Sometimes I zoom all the way in on a DRM transmitter looking for the carriers, for example,
yeah,
which requires
yes.
very fine precision.
Well, again, you then you're better informed about what would be a good feature than I am.
Yeah, but
So
I'm working on one channel. I could probably do that in GNU Radio or some other, not necessarily the KNIQ Radio is not necessarily the best place to do all that.
that's
That
a good
reminds me, I
point.
want to tell Clint, he told me that you generally can't receive DRM unless you're in the intended target area. I think he's right. I was looking at a couple of sites, actually North Korean transmitter last night from KFS. I was getting a signal noise ratio of like 19 dB and I still couldn't decode it. Even though the constellation looked pretty good, I still couldn't decode it.
Uh,
It may just be multipath. Too bad that northwest antenna isn't working.
yeah, it sure is. I wish it'd be helpful, but
Because even if
I'm
I get a strong signal on the other antennas, I'm probably picking up a lot of reverb from other places in the world that are causing multipath problems.
Well, I'm just wondering whether if I can go out there and throw up a few more antennas, and things like Lily's beverage is a marvelous antenna, that bidirectional beverage he put up.
Yeah. Well,
So
go out there with a sledgehammer and hit the northwest antenna when the no TV camera is looking. If it falls down, say, well, I guess it must have corroded this. Then I'll
I'll
have to
let
fix it.
yeah. Well, then I would have lost all my future access to the site. So
Well, I mean,
um,
I mean, actually,
anyway.
I would go out there if I could, if I knew which antenna it was, I could get access to the base. I'd just go out there do an inspection. Something must have been corroded through.
I may, yeah, next nice day I may go. I have to go out there to put out a couple of triple eights, and I want to put up um, the orange pie out there where there's things to decode,
Yeah.
and and a machine dedicated for Clint to use for WebSDR.
I was also listening to those two HF air frequencies last night through presumably the same antenna that the controllers are listening through. I could hear the airplanes fine. I was amazed at how weak the San Francisco transmitter was. And it's not that
Yeah,
far away. It's near Sacramento, right?
yeah. I think it's
It's like really, I can hear it in there, but it's really weak. So I guess you're right about nearby receivers not necessarily hearing transmitters strongly.
oh yeah. There's no ground wave between Davis and
Unless
out there in the
unless they're transmitting the vertical, they're not throwing anything low angle anyway. I mean,
yeah.
I have a friend across town, and if we're both on our horizontal antennas, we're not very strong. But if either one of us is on the vertical, then we're hella stronger.
Why would that be?
Well, I mean, vertical. I mean, any reasonable horizontal antenna at a low frequency has a takeoff angle of like 20, 30 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the TCI 530 Omni has, well, that should have a fairly high takeoff angle, shouldn't it?
it's designed for 45 degrees.
Right.
It's
So it's
not,
like
it's
three
not,
log periodics pointed up at 45 degrees, and both of those antennas are the same type. So
Right,
yeah.
but I'll bet it's more at the other end, the transmit end. That's who knows what they're using, but it's probably not a low takeoff angle. They're probably
uh,
not vertical. They're probably using something horizontal. I mean, the aircraft themselves are horizontal. So I mean,
yeah,
even if it's randomized after one hop, it'd
sure.
be silly to start out on the wrong.
So you're not surprised that I heard the transmitter, San Francisco transmit very weakly on its own receiver.
Correct.
Okay.
That doesn't shock me at all.
Okay.
I mean, Glenn has a hard time hearing WWV at times.
Yeah. Well, like you said,
You know,
well,
that's
sounds like
line of sight.
another example of the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Line of sight is not line of visual sight. It's very
No.
different.
And he's closer than Half Moon Bay is to Davis, I guess.
Oh, he's much
I
closer.
see where that I found that transmitter on the map. I see where it is. It's not that close.
Yeah.
It's a
might
lot
be
closer than I am.
dirt in between too.
Huh?
Might be dirt in between as well.
It is dirt in between, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I find it amazing. I mean, the web SDR is up in at Corinne, and there's stations in Brigham City that uh, with a good sighting scope, you could probably shoot their antenna, even though it's 10 miles away. But you don't hear them very well.
Really?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, unless they ran a vertical, it'd be better. But yeah,
Yeah.
most hams do not run a vertical. If
On HF. Yeah.
you're right. I mean, yeah,
Well, vertical antennas. I mean,
I
I
have
may, yeah, I may get another one here because they're so limited in ground space, but
right. I have one here as well. It's on my roof, which is metal, which helps reduce the noise. But as they say, it works equally poorly in all
or
directions.
in all directions. Right. All right, guys. See you later.
All right.
Take,
Oh, I
take care.
was going to ask, Phil, are your
Yeah.
machines after
What?
family characters?
What?
Are your computers after Family Guy characters or something?
Oh, no, they're named after Simpsons characters.
Okay, Terry.
Terry and Sherry, the twins
Okay,
in
then
Bart's class.
Brian there.
Oh,
Brian.
Brian is actually named after Brian Canner, the B6CYT, who I inherited from.
Oh, I remember him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was Mr. Amper.org.
That's right. And it was thanks to him that we got ARDC started.
Yep. Okay.
And, yeah, that's fun. All right. See you guys.
All right.
Hey, thanks for that, Phil. At 1001 closing now.
Sure thing, Scott. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Take care. Good evening. Oh, I'm going to bow out.
Yeah, I will too. See you.
Okay. Okay. Take care.